lot different today. I've got a tone issue, generally speaking. Our tone could have been really positive today. And the Cardinals only had to do one thing, Alex. They had to do one thing. Yesterday, they had to get Max Muncy out. That's all they had to do. Unfortunately, we're playing Dodgers highlights via Sportsnet in L.A. because the Dodgers kicked your ass all weekend long.
But the good news is you got 2 of 4, right? Hey, just like we all predicted.
I was so close to being so right about this weekend.
T-Bone, cute boys to men.
Okay, well, we're getting to that, but it ain't for this segment or this team, my friend. We'll get to them coming up here in just a little bit.
T-Bone's tweet after the first game?
Blues back in action tonight. Pre-game coverage with Alex starting at 7 o'clock. Talk about a team that saw their season come to an end over the weekend.
The Battlehawks?
We'll get to them at 11:30. Dude, the Battlehawks, that was crazy. 64-yard field goal to end things. A guy had not kicked a field goal since high school. All right, we'll get to that later. Cardinals.
All right, you're scatterbrained right now.
I'm just going to ask a very simple question. And I'm curious how many things you can find that would be the answer to this question. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The YouTube chat is off and running. The Graveyard, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. I'm sure there will be plenty of people that are yelling at me for being way too optimistic about the Cardinals. We'll get to it. What was the single biggest reason for the Cardinals' failures in their series against the Dodgers?
Do we all want to say it at the same time? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
The offense.
Okay, Alex, go
What
ahead.
the hell just happened here? I mean, go ahead. So let's look at the 4 games for us. Game number 1, your supposed number 2 pitcher, the guy that was the reason you didn't go out and sign another guy to pitch with Sonny Gray. Well, he got lit up. Zach Thompson, who you were super excited about. Well, he got lit up. Lance Lynn, who actually pitched well. Man, you want to talk about the difference of a tone? If they would have just not sucked in the bullpen for those last 2 games, I would have totally had a different tone coming in here because Lance Lynn and Steven Matz pitched awesome. But then your pitching blew up the games for you. Now, I understand you won the one in extras. Good on you. Bully for you. But your bullpen still blew a game that the Dodgers basically said, hey, here you go. You want to win this game? Go on, little buddy. Go on. Take one victory out of L.A. with you. And the Cardinals did, but they had to go to extras to do it because their pitching could have gotten done. And then the next day, because you're so shorthanded with your bullpen because of all of these injuries that you, for some reason, didn't realize, you went to John freaking King in that situation to get Max Muncy out, and you blew that one. So congratulations, Cardinals. When I thought the solid portion of your team was going to be the bullpen, they lost those 2 games, well, 1 game and then the game that you won in extras for you, and then the other 2 starters that we were supposed to be hyped about, yeah, they didn't look good. So I thought pitching was the reason I was frustrated after this weekend.
Yeah, the pitching wasn't great, but my frustration comes with this offense that we said was supposed to be really good. And look, they did face legitimately good starting pitching this weekend. Like that rotation, holy crap, and they're not even at full force yet. I don't think the Dodgers bullpen is all that great. They're missing some of their top guys. Gratterall, Trinan are out right now. So the offense should have been able to kind of awake, blossom like a flower, as Nick Sirianni would say. The offense was not good enough yesterday. They had a chance, though the bullpen did blow that game, they had a chance to kill the Dodgers in that one last night. Bases loaded thanks to walk, hit by pitch, catcher interference leads to your 2 runs, and then comes Gorman with a chance to put this game out of reach, and he strikes out swinging. And I'm not just going to circle the Gorman at-bat for this weekend. They left 25 guys on base and had 23 hits in this series. Now, some, like BK, would go, that's a lot of guys on base. That should be a good thing. It's only a good thing if you bring them home. Otherwise, you know what it is? It's not good. You know, it's not good enough.
I feel like this was a problem in the past for the Cardinals. For some reason, in the back of my
last
mind,
year, huh?
It's like deja vu, where before we were talking about an offense that was supposed to be as great as they were in 2013, that couldn't get the runners past second base.
Can I do my whole bit of, hey, it's good to get guys on, and over time you'll start driving them in because you don't have Nolan Arenado.
No.
Right
This audience is going to love that. Go for it.
Nolan Gorman isn't hitting very well right now, but he will eventually hit well. He did really well with runners in scoring position last year. I know it doesn't feel that it was that way because he strikes out a lot, but he actually is really good with runners in scoring position.
I think he went down 3 straight pitches, swung at all of them.
That's my whole bit. It's kind of hard to do it with any kind of full-throated confidence right now because it's now been more than a year since that's actually paid off in any meaningful way for me, but that's my true belief, so we'll throw that out there. My answer to the question was Ollie Marmol.
What?
Yeah.
What? You said
You have a Marmol jersey.
Yeah.
I know. And
You have his face painted on your wall.
I didn't think he managed well this weekend. I did not think he did a good job. And in fact, I thought his worst game that he managed over the weekend was the game on Saturday. They won it, but I thought he did a really poor job in setting his players up for success. Your job as a manager is to put your team in the best position to succeed, right? That's the ultimate goal. And I didn't think he did that on Saturday. In fact, I think he put him at a deficit in that game.
Is that because of the lineup?
And it partially, yes. The team overcame his decisions. This is something that happened a lot with Mike Matheny, but the team was so overly talented early on that it didn't matter what the decisions were that he was going to make. He was going to make choices that had very little logic within them, but because the players were good, they're just going to go out there, they're going to get the job done, and you all kind of go your merry way, right? That's what happened on Saturday. The Cardinals overcame Ollie Marmol's decisions. Over the weekend, though, I thought you saw a lot of questionable choices, in my opinion. So it started with the bullpen usage. I think it was on Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. They're down 5-0. You go to Giovanni Gallegos and Jojo Romero in that spot. That's a spot for Fernandez. You don't trust him very clearly. Like they do not think the managerial staff.
Yeah, why even have him on the roster? Because you don't want to lose him, but you're not using him.
Correct. This is one of those philosophical differences, to bring that term back to life. The management up top, John Mozeliak and his staff, clearly sees value in Fernandez. That's why they selected him in the Rule 5 draft. The only way they were able to keep him on the roster is to bring him on the 26-man roster on opening day. Now, some of the injuries helped that, right? It helps to alleviate the roster crunch. I thought there was a chance if Middleton was healthy to start out the season, they would not have kept Fernandez, and then they have to offer him back to Boston, and if not, then they got to work something out. So the fact that he's on the roster and they're not utilizing him in any of the first 4 games when there were ample opportunities to do so speaks to their lack of trust in that player. So that's frustrating, to say the least. Then it was on Saturday. I vented about this on Friday. I'm not going to get overly mad about it because it's not worth our time. But I thought it was a mistake to make this like a spring training game or to make it like a Little League game where you got to get everybody an at-bat early on in the season. I don't think that you needed to do that. I think sitting Jordan Walker in that game was silly. I think sitting Mason Wynn in that game was inexcusable.
Costed you a run.
And then late in the game, when you had opportunities to either pinch hit with Jordan Walker or Wilson Contreras, and when you had an opportunity to put Mason Wynn in the game as a defensive replacement, to not do so, and he said it was a scheduled day off, and then he said there were times when he felt the urge to put one of those players into the game. Well, listen to that urge, man. Listen to your gut feel. That's the correct decision. These guys are 23 and 21 years old. You don't need to sit them in the 3rd game of the year. That's nonsense. And if you felt like they couldn't make it through the first week of the season without getting time off, well, then sit them in spring training. Sit them in the games that didn't matter, so that way they can go a full week straight during the regular season. Anyway, so that's another thing that frustrated me to no end. That I thought was the most inexcusable move at any point this weekend was benching Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn in favor of getting opportunities for Matt Carpenter and Alec Burleson was fine.
So he ended up being the guy.
Now you're taking your anger to everybody.
Brandon Crawford, he signed here and said up front, I know what my job is. I'm a backup to Mason Wynn. Well, then serve as such.
That's what Mo told him. The manager had a different thought,
So there's
though.
that. And there's one other thing that really bothers me about the way that this team has approached the last month or so. And it's something that we kind of kept our eye on, but it was on the backfields, and we're like, you know what, pay attention to that, but I don't know that it's going to be a huge deal early in the season. Hopefully they're just ready to go. They approached spring training as if it was 3 months long, and you saw that bleed into the first series of the season. I feel like the Cardinals this weekend felt like they were approaching that entire thing as if it was a spring training series. You saw a couple of pitchers that are way below their typical velos, specifically with your 8th and 9th inning relievers. Gio is down right now, 3 miles an hour on his fastball velo. Ryan Helsley, velo down significantly right now. He doesn't trust his fastball. It's getting crushed. His slider, thank God he's got it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be getting out of these innings. And then you see what happened with Zach Thompson as well. And they said all spring, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm worried about it. It's something that's worth monitoring. The velo for these guys not being ramped up the way that it needed to be at this point in the regular season, problematic. So For all of those reasons and so many more, I'm mad at Ollie today. I don't think he managed a good series. I thought he gave them a distinct disadvantage by the moves that he made, the way that he operated. So yeah, I'm mad at the offense. I'm mad at the starting pitching. I thought the bullpen blew up quite a bit. That was all problematic. But the guy that's pulling the strings, that's putting them supposedly in position to succeed, I think he did a really good job of that 2 years ago. I thought last year it was a really tough job for him to be able to do that. This year, we saw one series so far, but the opening returns are not particularly good.
Yeah, this is a problem. I'm with you.
The fact that all three areas were pretty poor over the first series?
I think that was self-explanatory being the problem with this. But, I mean, the manager side of it, you don't want to just jump on the Ollie train and bash him before the season even begins because of the lack of experience and what it's going to look like. You give him a shot, but I mean, we saw trends of this last season at times, and I do think that we saw in every single game an area that Ollie made a mistake that cost them the opportunity to win. And the one, you go all the way back to the first game of the season where they pulled the infield in because they didn't want to give up that first run of the game.
In the first inning of the first game of the season.
Let me ask you this. Does it... I don't want to say he feels like he's managing scared because that... Although,
shouldn't be. He's got a nice contract now.
That's what I mean by that. But like that, when you pulled the infield in for that first game, that's what it felt like. It's like you're already managing scared.
I think he's managing like he doesn't trust his team.
And that's a problem.
Well, I'd get that. I don't trust him either.
Yeah, well, I think that's where we're at right now. I think that's what I feel coming off of the weekend.
But to not trust your team.
And that they've got a lot of runway. I feel like he's also managed that series like he knew his team was going to lose 3 out of 4 against the Dodgers, and the fact that they won on Saturday was like a minor miracle.
Well, and that's the front office, too, of being patient. It's a long season and things like that. But if you're not going to trust your team, I mean, you've got the offense that you should be trusting your team. That's not the issue. Hence, T-Bone's worry with this team at the first 4 games of the season. The pitching would be the area that I don't trust. Everything we've just talked about sounds an awful lot of philosophical differences between one side of this team and the other side of the team, which, again, picking up good vibrations just like we did in spring training. Not good after 4 games of the season.
Yeah, it was not a Picasso from Ollie Marmol over the weekend. It was a bad showing, in my opinion. And look, this is why I just disagreed with giving him the contract extension. I think the jury was still out if he was a good manager. And I understand that the front office believed in him, and they could have said all the right things publicly. They did not have to give him a contract extension. And look, I'm not calling for Ollie Marmol to be fired. I think he knew he was going up against a juggernaut, and honestly probably did manage a little scared, and maybe didn't trust a lot of guys. And frankly, he went up against the best team that I saw over the weekend in baseball. So I get it to a certain extent. But to that point, though, you still have to go out there guns blazing to beat the LA Dodgers. You cannot manage scared. You cannot play scared. If you're going to beat the Goliath of baseball, you have to just take it to them. And I felt like the Cardinals did not do that. And I think to your point on the front office saying be patient through the first month, that continues to be a very worrisome thing for me, that the Cardinals are approaching it as a be patient mentality. And I think it kind of leaked onto the field this weekend.
All right, final thing to get to here. You mentioned the Dodgers. Part of our assessment over the weekend has to be this. Oh my God, they're amazing. Oh my God, that team is good, man. Like, geez, being a pitcher and trying to navigate the top 3 of that order sounds miserable. Like, if I'm a reliever, I would go to the manager prior to this series and be like, hey, listen, I am available for multiple innings so long as I don't ever have to face Mookie Betts. Like anybody else in that order, I'm willing to face them. I'm not throwing a pitch to Mookie Betts. And if you make me do so, I will intentionally walk him. I will give the sign. I will tell the umpire, I'm not doing it, just let him go. The guy has more home runs than swings and misses through the first 6 games of the Major League Baseball season. He is batting .500. He has a slugging percentage. No, not an OPS. A slugging percentage of 1,100 through the first 6 games of the season. 4 homers, 2 doubles in 6 games. He's unbelievable. And behind him, you have to navigate Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. There's going to be a lot of pitching staffs that really struggle to navigate that lineup. Their pitching staff has some holes in it. Like, there's definitely the bullpen. You get to the underbelly of it. The Cardinals should have been able to take advantage of it yesterday. They didn't. But Bobby Miller's unbelievable. That guy became an ace like that. Yamamoto, really good. Glasnow, amazing. That team is going to be an absolute behemoth this season.
What's wild about it
They're
is
the Monstars.
Yeah, they are. Well, especially Mookie Betts. I think he officially became my favorite player over the weekend for how good he is. But the sad part about what you just said is it was Teoscar Hernandez and Max Muncy that beat the Cardinals 3 of the 4 games this weekend. Mookie Betts had a hand in it, but Teoscar Hernandez and Max Muncy were the ones that,
That's the thing. Like, they've got guys in the middle of the order, like bottom half of the order, that are going to crush you. If you're a right-handed pitcher, good luck against Max Muncy. If you're a left-handed pitcher, good luck against Teoscar Hernandez. Hernandez is going to strike out like 220 times this year. He's also going to hit 40 home runs.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
I'd take that. Not just strike out like we did and not get any home runs.
Well, we hit one.
Did we?
Yeah, Goldie hit one on opening day. That was it, though.
Look at us. We'll all look back on the season when they're picking third overall and say, remember when Goldie hit
Was
that
it
opening?
9-1 in home runs over the weekend? Is that what it ended up
8-1, I
being?
think it was.
Yeah. Not what you want. No.
The number was 43 strikeouts and 8 walks. That's
slug-
the number you're looking for.
Slug Davy
That's
slug did
terrible.
not happen.
What was it,
Well,
23?
And most of your offense was, hey, the Dodgers just happened to forget how to throw strikes, and the catchers kept hitting your bats,
Yeah,
and you got hit by a
5
pitch.
times.
Yeah, they were gifted a lot of runs and didn't take advantage of it.
Twice, and they said, basically, here you go, little buddy. You could win this one today. And the Cardinals said, no. You take it back.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm VK. We'll get to Alex's Blues coming up in about 15 minutes. Want to hear from you throughout the day as well. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You can check us out on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, the Dodgers are really good. We all know that. We're not letting them off the hook, by the way, but they're an excellent baseball team, and it's hard to measure this club that we knew was going to be somewhere around the muddy middle of the National League against that squad. You can learn a lot about them, though, against the Padres. We'll discuss that next here on 101 ESPN. Listen, I'm not taking anything away from what happened over the weekend. I want to say that on the front end, Alex. I'm not giving them an out. However, there's going to be a lot of teams that look bad this year against the LA Dodgers. There are. And we gave you all of the criticism in the first segment, and we will continue to do so throughout the day-to-day. So don't do that whole, soft St. Louis media giving them an... No.
Is Josh listening?
I'm not talking about just him, but, anybody that's out there, yes, they deserve all of the criticism for the way that they performed over the weekend. They let one game at least slip away from them. They should have split that series against the Dodgers. There's reasons to blame the hitting, the pitching, and the manager. All of those things are true. And also, man, that is an unenviable task as your first series of the season. Huh?
You think they're upset? You think the LA media's going, how did you lose game 3?
Absolutely.
How did you not lose, or how did you not beat Lance Lynn and Steven Matz? That's exactly what they're saying.
So that's the first series of the season. Tough task. No doubt about it. Now things get a little different for me. I am no longer saying going into any of these series that you should be overmatched. You shouldn't be overmatched against San Diego. That's a peer program. They're right in the middle of the National League. Yes, they've got good pitching. You'll see Darvish. You'll see Musgrove in this series. That's not going to be easy. But you should be able to compete against this team and hopefully win 2 out of 3. You should at least look like a team that is competitive. Your offense should look better in this series than it did against the Dodgers. There aren't the same excuses that if you are somebody that pats the Cardinals on the back, they could at least get away with against the Dodgers. The Marlins, nah, man, no excuses in that one. The Phillies, I understand that's a really good team. They're a better postseason team than a regular season team. You got to be competitive there. The Diamondbacks are a good team, not a great team. They're not in the category of the Dodgers. And then you've got Oakland, Milwaukee, Arizona again, the Mets, the Tigers, the White Sox, the Mets, the Brewers, the Angels, the Red Sox. Come on, man. No more excuses from here. This is where we can start really evaluating what the Cardinals are. It starts with San Diego, and you got to start getting some better performances out of this team.
Yeah, I think especially
the rotation.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was just going to say. I know that the offense can't be as bad as they were in that Dodgers series. So whatever the offense does against the Padres, Marlins, Phillies, Diamondbacks, it's not going to be a, ha-ha, see, Alex, I told you so. Fine. I expected the offense to be good. Frankly, that's how this team is going to survive. I'm looking more at the pitching because, again, in terms of starting pitchers, I was pleased by 2 of the 4 guys that we saw. I think Lance Lynn was very impressive, and I liked what I saw with Steven Matz. So that's a good sign, especially when you know you're going to get Sonny Gray back sooner rather than later. It's just figuring out the Miles Michaelises and whatever they decide to do with Zach Thompson once Sonny Gray comes back. But, yeah, I'm looking at the pitching. 3 games against the Padres, 3 games against the Marlins, 3 against the Phillies. I'm expecting you to win 2 of 3 in 2 of those 3 series. If you're not coming out with a series win in at least 2 of those 3, and I would say specifically San Diego and Miami, then I'm going to start to believe that, okay, maybe that was just the Dodgers effect. But, man, if you drop all 3 of these series or you get swept in one of these, it's going to be really hard to not deny that this team is a bunch of frauds from what they said in the offseason.
That's 100%.
I mean, laugh all you want, but that's fraud.
I think it's true.
Just the way that you phrased it is great.
I think you learn a lot. I think you're 100% right. I think it's about is this pitching plan that they were really selling us on about getting quality starts. Now is the time that we see if it works or not, because you're going to see Gibson, Lynn again, which I wasn't as impressed with because he kind of pulled the John Gant Houdini act.
enjoyed the Lance Lynn experience while also acknowledging that was completely...
I'm glad you had fun. I was very nervous.
I liked the cup adjustment when he walked off the mound.
It was unsustainable. You can't win that way regularly, but watching it once, him having the mettle to be able to do that, the intestinal fortitude to be able to do that, that is something that I will give him credit for, man. He got out of 2 big-time jams early on in that game.
Yeah, and I think the pitching is going to have to end up. The pitching is going to be the reason that the Cardinals can win these series. And I know we talk about the offense. Man, you just saw against the Dodgers. You can have a great offense. And I think the Cardinals have a good offense. They're going to get shut down by great pitching, and you're going to see a lot of good pitching. Against San Diego, you're going to see 2 of their dudes in this series. When you go against Miami, they've got some solid pitching. You go against Philadelphia, they've got some solid pitching. So the offense is going to have to the pitching is going to have to keep you in these games till you can get to these bullpens and then try and take advantage of them. The Padres' bullpen was not good over the weekend. Miami's bullpen was not good over the weekend. The Phillies' bullpen was awful over the weekend. The pitching for you has to give you a chance. The issue for their pitching this weekend was Michaelis and Thompson didn't give you competitive starts, and you were basically done in those games by the 3rd or 4th inning.
Michaelis was the problem.
Yes.
The truth is, everything was a trickle-down effect from Miles Michaelis. And this is, it goes back to their offseason plan, right? Like, this team did not, will not, has not added a number 2 starter to the mix. And because of that, they trusted Miles Michaelis to be the number 1 starter, which means that when he goes very short in his appearance in the home or on opening day, it sets everything back. Here's what Miles Michaelis, by the way, has done in his season openers over the past 4 years for him. Like his 4 season opening appearances for the Cardinals: 3 1/3, 5 earned runs; 3 2/3, 2 earned runs; 5 innings, 5 earned runs; 5 2/3, 4 earned runs. He doesn't get deep into games. He does get hit around a lot early on in the season. In one of those years, I think it was 2 years ago, his second start was a complete game in which I think he allowed 1 earned run, if I'm not mistaken. Like, Michaelis is a notoriously slow starter. It's kind of the Paul Goldschmidt thing that we talk about. I'm not telling you he's going to be great this year. I would definitely short that stock. But Michaelis typically gets off to a very slow start, and if things are going to get better, he ramps up from there. The problem for the Cardinals is they needed him to get off to a fast start. Their entire basis of this team, the foundation of the team, is innings. They need innings out of their starters. Here's the problem, Alex. In the early portion of the season, nobody gets innings out of their starters. There were a total of 6 starting pitchers in all of Major League Baseball through the first weekend of the season that went at least or more than 6 innings, so 6 1/3 or better. Only 6 starters in all of Major League Baseball, man. So the Cardinals were counting on something nobody is doing. Nobody in the entire sport. They were counting on that against the Dodgers as the foundation of their build. So yeah, it shouldn't be surprising to anybody that that plan that was never going to work in the first turn through the rotation failed spectacularly. And now you've got to get something more. You've got to get a long start out of Miles Michaelis. We'll see what happens out of Gibson. I don't think he's going to get deep into the game, which is going to be really problematic because your bullpen is already shot as is. This is a team that is very thin in terms of its margin for error, and they're operating on that razor's edge. If this thing starts to snowball, there's no getting it back because we've seen this team does not operate with any kind of urgency. They're just going to allow it to happen and say, what could we have possibly done? Yeah. There were no moves to be able to make. What could we have done? They do this every single season.
Boy, exhibit A, B, C, D, E, F, and G on that poster board when Mo pulls the old, what else were we going to do? There was nothing else out there. It's going to be really embarrassing for him. I just don't think there's any optimism with Miles. Now, I hope he turns it around, but we talked about this on Friday. Like, he's a pitch-to-contact guy, and I know he's betting on that a lot of those turn into soft grounders when they make contact, but the way that it just looked with Miles is he's pitching one way and guys are knowing what to expect. And with the lack of shift, you just can't get away from that one. Again, I was pleasantly surprised with Lance Lynn. Do I think it's sustainable? No. But maybe he can at least provide you half of a season where he looks somewhat like a number 3 compared to a number 4 or a 5 that you're expecting with. Maybe Matz can stay consistent, but you're right. I mean, what you've put together right now is where the concern has come from. And now you're going on a stretch of they're competitive opponents. They're opponents that I think a lot of people will look at and say they've got World Series opportunities in front of them. Maybe they're not the best. Marlins not in this category, but
playoff aspirations at a minimum.
That's the litmus test for you. And I get that it's the first month of the season and we can all get angry and say it's a long season, but I'm just not buying into that this year. It's not a long season. Last year you were 9 games below 500 at the end of the first month and you never came back from that.
We've seen what can happen. When you lack pitching and you get off to a slow start and you have injuries, sounds familiar. Yeah, this thing could snowball on you quickly.
Exactly.
And you know your front office won't fix it.
Exactly. This is not the Milwaukee Brewers. This is not the LA Dodgers. This is not a team that operates with any sort of urgency from its front office to make moves to be able to stop the bleeding. This is a front office that looks at the bleeding and says, ooh, hopefully that stops quickly. Because if not...
oh, wait, there's a bigger hole on the other side.
If not, this is going to be a scenario where they bleed out. Like, there's no getting away from that, man. We know how this team operates when it loses now. We've seen it. For the first time in 17 years, we got to see this team do it last year. And they did nothing. They just looked at it and said, well, why isn't this working? Well, maybe if you flip a couple of things around, maybe that'll help it. Oh, nope, that didn't. Oh, well, maybe if we just
oh, God, he's bleeding more.
Uh-oh.
What if we bench our catcher?
Yeah.
What if we bench our right fielder?
Things around. Like, there's nothing that can be done with this team. They have built the roster that they wanted, and now they find out if it works or not. And if it doesn't, man, it's the most pivotal season in the Cardinals organization in 20 years for a reason. If it doesn't work, then everything fails, everybody gets fired, and we try to figure out what to do moving forward. Nolan Arenado probably goes elsewhere. Paul Goldschmidt probably goes elsewhere, so long as somebody wants Nolan Arenado. That's a conversation that we can get into a little later today. Coming up next, speaking of a team that doesn't have a whole lot of players that other teams would want right now. Uh-oh.
Dude, that was unnecessary.
What happened to the Blues on Saturday, dude? That was embarrassing. We'll talk about it next.
Terry Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals fell to the Dodgers last night 5-4 as LA takes 3 of 4 from the Cardinals as they now go to San Diego where they start a 3-game set tonight. 8:40 will be first pitch. Kyle Gibson on the mound for St. Louis, and they will go up against Waldron for the San Diego Padres. Blues back in action tonight as well as they take on the Edmonton Oilers. Well, pregame coverage starting at 7 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 8. The Sports Update driven by Johnny Londoff. Find a road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Turnover, Sharks in, shoot, score! Play broken up, but they give it back, shoot it, off the post, rebound, it's in, and the Blues are losing 2-0. Look out, it comes loose, Sharks get it, score! 3-0 San Jose. Sharks get there, all the way down the ice, slap it in for the empty net goal. Jan Ruda's going to put the Sharks up 4-0. It was a must-needed one, and this Blues team will go to the dressing room amidst a chorus of boos tonight. 4-0 the final. The San Jose Sharks snap a 9-game losing streak.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that's what it sounded like on Saturday night right here on your home of the Blues 101 ESPN as the Blues lose 4-0 at home, get booed off of the ice.
Fine, man.
As they get shut out by the San Jose Sharks in what is, I believe now officially, the most embarrassing performance of the regular season by this team that has had a few of them.
I was say it's kind of sad that I can go. Well, there's a couple.
You guys think there's another one that beats that?
Oh, no, I was being sarcastic. There was nothing that trumps this. JR and I were talking at the game when they were
that
losing.
Columbus one before the All-Star break to me.
They lost 1-0,
bad.
didn't show up, and
Yeah.
there was at least something that you could point to, which is the goaltending that showed up in that game.
And you never were
there was
out,
nothing in this one.
You were never outshot in a period by Columbus. They had 3 shots on goal in that San Jose Sharks second period. Like JR and I were talking, JR said, or I asked JR, is this the worst loss that you've seen from the Blues in the last 4 years? And man, we were trying to come up with one, like that game a couple of years ago when you got shut out by the Arizona Coyotes.
Oh,
but JR even said, he's like, yeah, but at the time you had played them 7 times in a row. So he's like, what? They had the number on you. You haven't played this team in almost 4 months. 4 months. You haven't played the Sharks. Yeah.
Everything. You put yourself into a position where we all knew,
you can't
they
lose.
knew, you have zero ability to lose.
Yeah.
You're done. Like, losing that game means you are done. They're technically, if you look at the mathematics side of things, they're technically still alive. We all know in this room, and let's be honest, they know in their room, they're done. They have no chance of making the postseason. They died their death for the postseason potential on Saturday. Alex, the Sharks have now shut out 2 teams this year. The Blues on Saturday night and the Kraken on January 30th.
And by the way, I looked this up. The game after the Kraken were shut out by the Sharks, they have the 5th worst schedule in the National Hockey League since that game.
The Blues are the only team
Yeah, they're bad.
to lose by 4 or more goals against the Sharks this season, and they've done so twice, man. Twice. What happened? How does that happen in that kind of a game against that kind of a team on Saturday?
I have no idea. I mean, that just goes to the culture side of things and not being ready to play. Drew Bannister said that they have to be ready to play. Drew Bannister talked during the media session in the morning about how you can't take this team lightly. It's the same stuff that the other head coach was saying this season, and the team still came out and laid eggs. There's nothing you can say to excuse what came up with that or even explain what happened in that game. The Sharks didn't play well. The Sharks just played north-south while the Blues played east-west. The second period, you had 3 shots on goal. It took you 18 minutes to get it took you 13 minutes to get your first shot on goal. And then the final 2 shots that you got in that period were the final 2 minutes of the second. You had a power play and didn't get a shot on goal. And here's the thing. This season, it's been whipping boy after whipping boy. You find one, and you've pointed to it and say, that's the guy that you lost the game. People will go to Kyrou. Kyrou had 8 shots on goal and 13 shot attempts in that game. May not have been high danger chances, but at least he was shooting the puck, and that's more than I could say for other players. Maybe you want to point at the goaltender. Why'd you play Hofer over Jordan Binnington? Guys, Hofer has the 2nd best save percentage since the beginning of February in the National Hockey League. That's why you played him in that game, to give Binnington the day off to play the next 2. That was a complete team team loss. That wasn't an individual playing poorly. That wasn't a guy that didn't play up to his game and make mistakes. Every single person in that game decided to play in the third period. The first period, you looked good, but Mackenzie Blackwood, who had an .897 save percentage on the season, was just stopping everything, which I think tells you more about the Blues not going to the front of the net. Second period, you come out with nothing. And then the third period, you decide to push, and there's 23 shots on goal. But by then, you're dead in the water.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. And the response by the Blues for tonight's game against Edmonton is to change up basically everything, which... To a degree, I understand. When you have a performance like that, you should definitely change things up. However, the way that they did so is going to make Alex Ferrario very upset. So, your top line, according to the lines. Yeah, good luck. The top line, according to the rush lines earlier today, they've got Brandon Saad skating with Jake Neighbors and Robert Thomas. I actually don't have a problem with that. That's fine.
I don't have a problem with it. Booch was not working with Thomas there for those few games, and right now Robert Thomas needs some help because Robert Thomas is in a little bit of a goal drought. So I'm not angry about this. At least you kept Neighbors with Thomas.
Top line to me is totally fine. And then we get to the issues. Toropchenko is now on the second line.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Pavel Buchnevich is back at center.
Oh, good. Oh. Let's go back to that for the guy that's
And Jordan
struggling.
Kyrou will flank him on the right side.
Why?
Now let's continue.
What? No, let's not continue for a minute.
Alex.
Pavel Buchnevich freaking had 2 goals the moment they moved him back to a wing, and now we're going back to center?
Uh-huh.
He's due at the center
Because Kevin Hayes has been bumped to a wing on your third line, with Braden Shen centering that line, and Kapanen back into the lineup as a third-line winger.
Well,
slow line.
That must mean that you decided to put Zach Bolduc on the fourth line, which makes
Sammy
no
Blais
sense.
on the fourth line.
Oh, so Blais and Kapanen are staying in the line. So Walker came out. So
Walker.
What the actual bleep?
That's not the only one that's going to upset you, Alex. The Blues have made their decision on the blue line as well. Letty and Parayko sticking together.
Yeah, I like that one.
Krug is with Falk.
Oh, no.
And Scandella will be returning to the lineup with Tucker tonight. Matt Kessel has been benched once again with Scott Perunovich.
Remember what happened the last time they decided not to play Matt Kessel? They sent him down to the minors for 8 games, and the Blues, won 2
At this point, it would be for the best if they lose every game.
Couple of things with this one. I know what you're trying to do, but it's not going to work. Please take Pavel Buchnevich off of the center position. He's not a centerman. Even if you don't like the way that Shen's playing at center right now, doesn't matter. These are your centers right now. Kevin Hayes and Braden Shen should not be at a center position with nobody who can score on their wing.
If you're going to do it, though, you definitely should do it against the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the good news is they'll be going up against the other team's third line, while Buch, Kyrou, and Toropchenko are going up against Leon Draisaitl. Here's the problem, though.
What could go wrong?
How does that third line score goals? I'm genuinely asking you this. How does that third line score goals? Kevin Hayes is your net front presence.
I think you do what Kapanen did for his last goal. You bank it off the ref. It comes to him by accident.
His last goal was? Do you know when his last goal was?
Wasn't it that one that I'm talking about?
Yeah, March 3rd against Boston. And other than that, the guy hasn't.
Take him for a goal tonight.
The guy has not scored a goal prior to that game since November 4th. I did the last 6 games for Kasperi Kapanen. He's averaging 13 minutes. He's got 1 point. He's a -1.
1 point?
1 point, and it's a freaking assist in his last 6 games. Guys, Zach Bolduc in his last 6 games. 2 points where he scored a goal. He's a +1, has 2 more shots on goal than Kapanen, and he's averaging 3 minutes less than Kapanen. What are we doing right here?
Well, he turned the puck over against the Sharks that led to a goal.
I understand the argument of, well, Alex, they're still in the playoff push because they're 5 points behind the Kings. Fine, but your team is in a better position to win hockey games when Zach Bolduc is in the lineup.
And even if they weren't.
Who cares? Put him in the lineup.
It is time to play the young guys.
We are now where the Cardinals were in September.
Yeah.
Just give them opportunities. There is almost no downside at this point.
Oh, this is great. I'm sorry, BK. This is a great point. Now I'm fired up. Somebody just brought this up. What is Hayes' face-off win percentage in the last 5 games? How do you move him from a center position? His face-off in the last 5 games is averaging 60%. And you're taking him off the face-off, Todd?
Well, Butch is probably close to that, right?
No! All right, hold on. You've got 8 games left.
I thought that what they would do in this game was, in all seriousness, if you were going to move Hayes off of center, they should have put Dean as the third line center tonight. And move Hayes, or if you were just going to keep Hayes, put Hayes on the fourth line.
Or put him at the second line and put Booch with him there. It's a line you haven't tried.
Or the fourth line.
It doesn't matter. Dean and Bolduc and Kessel should be in the lineup every single game until the end of the season. There's no argument for it. And again, The other side is going to say, well, you're still pushing for a playoff spot. Fine. But in the last 6 games, Kapanen has 6 shots on goal. Sammy Blais in that one game, he had 7 hits, but he had 1 shot on goal. At least Bolduc and Dean are shooting. Dean was playing on the penalty kill late in the game for you,
Again,
and the Calgary Flames won.
If they weren't, let's operate under let's say they stink. They're just terrible. You might as well go ahead and give them the experience. Like, they're going to be a part of your lineup next year.
Wouldn't you want these guys to get a feel for a playoff push, even if you don't think they got a chance at this? It's a feel of playoff hockey.
And just a feel of NHL hockey.
Yeah.
That, like, if you're going to have Bolduc and Dean up here, play them every game. You have when you are in this spot, you have very few resources to make players better, right? One of the few things that you can do, though, to help them, to help push them along, because progress isn't linear. Sometimes you see guys go up and then they go down. Think of, for example, Jordan Kyrou. Last year was a step in the right direction. This year, at least from an offensive standpoint, I think he's been a little better defensively, but we don't have to argue about that. This year's been a step back. Robert Thomas, I feel like he took a step forward 2 years ago, took a step back last year, and then now is really stepping forward again to take that star level. Well, for these guys that are young, let's push them in that direction. Let's see if they can stand their ground against these kinds of teams. And if you're going to do this where you're yanking them in and out of the lineup, it feels like Mike Matheny when he was yanking like Colton Wong and Randall Grichuk in and out of the lineup. Well, you're never going to really find out what they're capable of until you just let them fail. Just let them fail. They're going to. Like, there's going to be a lot of moments where Bolduc just makes a terrible mistake in his own zone.
He turned the puck over on the goal that cost them.
And it's happened multiple times in the last 2 weeks.
Fine, but that's the mistakes that you got to learn.
Correct.
Rather than put them in the press box and watch those same mistakes take place by veteran players.
It doesn't make sense to me. I really do not understand it, and we'll get into the 12 o'clock hour on what this means for their decision with Jimmy Snuggerud, because if you're going to operate this way with Jimmy Snuggerud, dude, he shouldn't come up. You should not burn a year of experience, a year on the entry-level contract to yank him in and out of the lineup for like the last 7 games of the season. That would be nonsense. It would be stupid. All right, coming up next, I'm sure you guys have a few questions, whether it's Blues, Cardinals, Battlehawks, Illinois.
No.
City had a game this weekend that didn't go particularly
Did everybody
well.
in St. Louis lose this weekend?
More or less.
Yeah.
We'll get into all of that with
lost.
questions and answers coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Classic Air Care who have been making people comfortable since 1926. Right now we're in that sweet spot where, you don't have to have the heat on anymore, but you're not turning the air on. You're just opening up the windows and letting the breeze in. But let me tell you, in about a week, we know how St. Louis weather works, is going to get hot. And that means you got to flip the AC on, which means you're going to have to do that fine tuning, which is why you've got to have the right company. And that's why I use Classic Air Care. I've been using them since we purchased our house about 4 years ago. We even used them prior in our older house because Classic Air Care has been taking care of us with the maintenance program, which means before I flip the air on, before I flip the heat on, I have them come out, they check everything, they fine-tune it, they clean it, they let me know it's old, but they tell me what they need and what I need to do to keep it in good shape until I have to purchase that new HVAC system. So you got to get with somebody you trust, and that needs to be Classic Air Care. If you are in the market for purchasing an HVAC system, they've got 18-month 0% financing available for you. And if you don't believe me, check out all of the testimonials, the 4.8 rating on Google reviews of why Classic Air Care is so great. The Ferrario family's been using them for the last 15 years. You can as well. Classic Air Care, classicaircare.com.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for questions and answers. Coming up in 10 minutes, the Cardinals' limitations with innings are going to put them between a rock and a hard place. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. But first, let's get to questions and answers. Some of yours from the text line. Let's start with this from the 314. Guys, what happened to Yachty? I haven't seen any news on this.
He's
Did he
Puerto
decide
Rico.
not to coach?
He's Puerto Rico. He's taking care of his basketball team.
I
He's on
did
baseball
hear
team
an
now.
interview yesterday with John Mozeliak. He was on the Cardinals radio network, and he was asked about Yadier Molina, and he said, hey, listen, he's got some stuff that he needs to take care of in Puerto Rico. Any Yachty is good Yachty. We'll see him when we see him.
It's kind of been the mantra all spring since we hired Yachty.
So,
At some point, we're going to get that part of any Yachty or no?
wouldn't hold your breath.
Okay.
All right, 314-399-9646 from the 314. Guys, if Hicks, Flaherty, and Tyler O'Neill all have good seasons, do you think Mo would care?
No, Mo never cares.
T-Bone, you said you think Jordan Hicks is the one that got away?
Potentially.
Dude, he looked good for San Francisco.
I think the one that they would regret would just be Hicks. I think the Flaherty and O'Neill one had run their course.
I agree.
I mean, we heard Ollie say we need guys that are winners in our locker room, and they talked about locker room issues. I'm just going to say the quiet part out loud here. I think Flaherty and O'Neill were the problems in the locker room last year.
Yeah, neither were ever going to hit their potential here in St. Louis. They obviously had a problem with the Cardinals, and specifically Ali Marmol. If he's here, you're never going to get the best out of those players.
Hicks is the one, though, I think that could potentially be the one that gets away. The reason I say that, and I heard Stoltz bring this up on the Fast Lane a couple days ago, and I thought it was an excellent point, was the Cardinals just conceived in their mind he's a reliever. You know, they saw it work before when he first came up as a reliever, had Tommy John. They tried the starting experience, and it didn't work in a short sample that they immediately went back to a reliever, and it worked as a
push back
reliever.
against that a little bit, and I'm not saying you're wrong. That's how they view it.
Because it was Stoltz that said it, so if you want to say somebody's wrong.
No, but what you're saying is totally correct. What I push back against is them giving him a real fair chance.
Oh, 100. I
Because
100% agree with that.
When they gave him the opportunity, it was like, hey, it's opening day. We need you as a starter. You good with that? Can you do that? Can you do that? We didn't have you ramp up at all. So, like, your first start's going to be 2 innings.
Yeah.
And then we'll find a way to get you to 5 innings eventually. And he's like, yeah, sure. I love starting. That sounds awesome. Yeah. So he went out there.
That actually sounded just like Jordan Hicks. Yeah, man, I love it. It's great.
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, hey, by the way, we need you to provide innings, too, because our other starters around you, they don't provide innings. So if you don't, we're super screwed.
It's called front office malpractice, and they do it all the time.
This is one of the things that is helpful about having a true, legitimate ace, which Logan Webb is. It allows you to experiment with the back end of your rotation because you have Webb who's going to throw, like 7 or 8 innings every time he goes out there. Well, now the number 5 starter, if he goes 4 or 5 and they're really good innings, sweet, man. Like, we got a really nice number 5 starter that's going to give us not a ton of innings, but at the end of the year, like 130, 140.
Yeah.
Feel pretty good about it, and they're going to be good innings. That's what that allows you to do. The Cardinals don't have that luxury, man. Because they don't have a number 1 or, frankly, a number 2 starter right now, currently, before Sonny Gray returns, you can't go out there and experiment with a guy like Jordan Hicks. You don't have that luxury.
Yeah, and I totally agree that they mismanaged that in 2022 and never gave him a fair shot. Because I remember it was like, oh, Verhagen's going to be the 5th starter. And then he got rocked in his final spring game and they totally panicked and had no idea what to do with that 5 spot. But I just find it interesting because the Giants, and the other thing the Giants have convinced him to do that I don't know how the Cardinals didn't, it could have just been stubbornness until it was like, hey, if you want to start, you got to do this.
The Cardinals?
No, from Hicks.
Oh.
He's throwing 97 now. And you go, well, that's still pretty hard. Yeah, but it's not 101. And now he's got better command of his sinker, and he's got a splitter that plays. They're now telling him, like, dude, when you throw 101, you just don't have your best command. When you max effort, you don't have your best command, which is also not going to allow you to go deep. And he didn't go deep in the game. He went 5 innings. But his stuff was unbelievable. His stuff is going to play. That's how talented his stuff is. You just got to get him to locate it. By them bringing his average fastball down like 4 miles an hour, he's able to control it, and now he's got this splitter that works on top of it. I think he's going to pan out for the Giants. I really do as a starter.
All right, from the 314, guys, they seem to be doing the same thing with Libby that they did with Jordan Hicks. Why do all of the starters that the Cardinals try to develop end up in the bullpen, and then they wonder why they can't develop starting pitching? So I do think one thing that is fair to say, like, for every team in Major League Baseball, when you fail to develop a starter, they end up in the bullpen. Bullpen arms are all failed starters. The reason
Andrew Chafin shirt
Great
says.
T-shirt.
The reason why you're out there is because you weren't good enough over 6 innings to be able to be a starter. Otherwise, the value is in the starting. That's what they pay for. That's what you want to be, unless you're a closer, in which case now we're paying the best ones a crazy amount of money as well. But yeah, all of those guys are field starters for the most part. One thing that I do get frustrated by with the Cardinals is that sometimes, like, could Andre Palante be a starter? I don't know. On a different team, I think he would get an opportunity to do so, but you can't do that here because you desperately need your number 5 to be a really solid number 5 starter to give you 5 innings regularly, because if not, you're screwed. So it goes back to the lack of a front-end starter prevents you from doing things with your 4 and 5 that these other teams are allowed to do. They can develop guys at the big league level as 4s and 5s because they know the next day I'm getting 6, 7, 8 innings of great starting pitching out of my number 1. So I think that's part of why that happens as well. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from the 636. T-Bone, how you feeling today after your Illini lost?
Not great. You know, it's a little tough. It stings.
It was close after the first half.
It was. In fact, they probably should have been winning at the first half. I understand UConn's a buzzsaw, and I'm not trying to take anything away from UConn. I thought that was the Illini's worst game all season long. And I said their ceiling was probably Elite Eight, so I'm not disappointed. This isn't like a first-round exit. I'm a little disappointed how they played in that game. UConn is the better team. They are not a 30-point better team than the Illini, and that's where my disappointment comes.
I think they were a 30-point better team than the Illini on that day. And I was amazed by how well that was the best game of basketball that I've seen played this year.
I don't see a team beating them. NC
Not if they
State's
play like that, man.
No,
Purdue's the only one I think that's got a shot.
I don't. Man, watching Purdue and then watching that UConn game, UConn felt like it was playing with its food in the first half, and then they said, okay, cool, let's end this.
Defensively, they are so good inside.
And they've got so many scores.
I think it's going to be tough for Edey to score, and if that happens, then good luck to Purdue. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to a game of in or out, but next, the Cardinals have to find their version of Bobby Miller. But how do they do it? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. I got to tell you about my friends over at Victory Men's Health. It is time, man, out there to unlock your inner champion. And they can do that over at Victory Men's Health. Check them out today. Go to one of their great 4 locations across the St. Louis area. They've got one in O'Fallon, Illinois, O'Fallon, Missouri. They have another one in Town and Country. And their newest location opened up just about a month ago in Sunset Hills, Missouri as well. For the exact locations, you can go to victorymenshealth.com. When you're there, you can check out all of the different options that they have to offer for you. If you're looking for something that can help you with your weight loss journey, they've got that available for you. If you have potential symptoms of low testosterone, maybe you wake up in the morning, you're feeling groggy, you just don't have the same energy that you once did, they can help you out with that as well. They'll take that lab draw kit, they'll find out exactly what it is that you need, and when they get those results back, if you are indeed in that low testosterone range, they can help you out over at Victory Men's Health. So go to one of their 4 great locations across the St. Louis area or see them at victorymenshealth.com. So where are the Cardinals going to be able to find their version of Bobby Miller? Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, over the weekend, I was blown away, and the Cardinals were as well, frankly, by Bobby Miller and his 100-mile-an-hour easy gas, and then the changeup that he's got, along with a slider. Like, that dude already looks like one of the best young starters in Major League Baseball. He's 25 years old. Last year, he started about 20 games for the Dodgers, had a 3.7 ERA. I underestimated, though, how quickly he would go from being a nice young starter, middle-of-the-rotation guy with upside to, oh, yeah, that guy's like a number one already. I mean, he looks like Spencer Strider out there. Not physically, but with his stuff. He looks like the next version of Spencer Strider. That just, it happens, and nobody saw it coming, and then, wow, okay, yeah, I guess this guy is just going to develop into one of the best starters in Major League Baseball.
Of course he is.
When was the last time the Cardinals had that happen, man? Like, who was the guy that came up and you're like, okay, there's real optimism here. And then year two, you were like, oh, there's not just optimism. This dude's a stud. Because I'm looking right now at
Wasn't it Flaherty?
Maybe that's the list.
The half a season, and then it was like, oh, okay, this guy's got some stuff. And then you're talking about what he did. So it was one full season, right? 2018 was the full season where you're like, okay, you could see the optimism, and then 2019 was where he took off. Yep. Now, I know it was the second half, but at least you saw it and you're like, damn, this dude is a stud.
That's probably the answer.
Say him or Waka was the other one I was thinking of.
This is the entire list. The entire list of Cardinal starters aged 25 or younger to throw at least 100 innings in a season since 2016. Michael Waka, Luke Weaver, John Gant, Jack Flaherty, Dakota Hudson, Carlos Martinez, Andre Palante.
That is a mixed bag of results.
Among that
Hot
list,
damn.
the only players who did so twice before the age of 25, which is what Bobby Miller is likely to do this year for the Dodgers, Michael Waka, Jack Flaherty, Carlos Martinez. End of list. It's the entire list of starters, 25 or younger, to throw 100 innings in multiple seasons prior to turning 26 years old in the last almost decade for this team, dude. Well, there's your problem. Your problem is your pipeline for starting pitching is not just depleted, it's completely evaporated. It's gone. And until you find your version of Bobby Miller, and it doesn't have to be a number one, but like a front-end starting pitcher, somebody that can help you out as a number two or even a number three, you're never going to be able to be on the same level as the Dodgers or the Phillies or the Diamondbacks even. Like, those guys have all found ways, whether it was to trade and develop for a guy or to draft and develop a guy. And the Cardinals haven't been able to do that.
So then the question I ask is, what needs to happen for them to do that? Because I would imagine every single person that's listening right now when I ask that question is screaming at their radio station, you need to fire John Mozeliak. I got to feel like there's more of a trickle-down effect, though, than just John Mozeliak in terms of developing and identifying this type of talent with your pitchers. I don't know if that starts with the pitching coach, and you hope that Dusty Blake is going to get that. I don't know if that's Chaim Bloom, who might be taking over after Mo, because he has the expertise in that pitching development. I don't even know if it's the manager. But you know, like we do this with the Blues, where we're always talking about finding that talent, and you're like, okay, well, they've had success in terms of drafting, developing these guys in later rounds, and then it's just hoping that you strike gold with the top. I don't know if I could say that with the Cardinals, specifically for the pitching side of things. And to sit here and say, well, at some point you got to hit this, man, I feel like we've been doing that for the last 10 years since Adam Wainwright, that at some point you're going to hit this, and you hit it for a little increment where you're like, we got it. Carlos Martinez, Michael Waka, Jack Flaherty, Alex Reyes, injuries, development stunt, off field, whatever it might be, all falls apart. And I don't know how you fix that.
You got to start taking shots in the draft. And I think that's where their whole formula
But does that change mindset, though?
Where
you see the swing and miss?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what they have to do. When I say you take shots in the draft, you look at the high school or the college arm that throws like 100, probably doesn't know where it's going, but he's got stuff. And you say, can we fine-tune it? That's what all these teams are doing. I mean, the Dodgers took Bobby Miller near the back half of the first round when they selected him, and it was a pure, okay, he's got the stuff. We'll see if we can work with him and see if we can develop him. A lot of what the Cardinals have done, and I think the reason the pitching department is kind of dried up, is they thought the whole pitch to contact, work to our defense is going to work, and baseball slowly started to go towards the swing and miss model, and hitters have gotten so much better that they can hit guys that are just throwing in the zone. And I think that's part of the reason where the pitching development has dried up for the Cardinals. They've got to start taking shots in the draft. They did that with the position player side. You look at what they did in that 2020 draft. They said, man, Walker's a high school kid that probably is going to need some seasoning. He has got raw power. Let's take him. Nolan Gorman, same way. Nolan Gorman. Victor Scott was a little bit of a project, but they took him in the 5th round. Like, they could see, okay, if this clicks, it ends up being, wow, this guy's going to hit potentially 30 bombs. No longer are we looking to draft the, no offense to like Tommy Edman. We're no longer looking to draft the Tommy Edman. We're looking for the potential superstars. They've got to do that on the pitching side because a lot of the guys in the system are not that. McGreevy is not that. Jerpy is probably not that. Tink Hintz is probably not that. TK Roby, I'm not sure he's that either. I'm not sure they have a internal guy that is an ace.
And the other thing is you got to keep trying.
Yes.
Like this is the thing that is hard about starting pitching is you're going to miss on 5 guys in a row and then one will click and it works. The problem for the Cardinals is they've had like a guy that they can really lean on in recent seasons where it's like, okay, this guy is going to be really good for us. Okay, but what if it fails? Because more often than not, the vast majority of pitching prospects fail in one way or another, whether it's they just don't become the front end starting pitcher that you were looking for. They become Dakota Hudson. Couple of nice seasons, nothing really super exciting, but solid, and then they get hurt, and then they maybe become a reliever, and then they're gone. That's like the typical path for a prime level pitching prospect. That's the majority of them go somewhere down that path, and then they sign for $3 million for each of the next 5 seasons, and then they're out of the league, and we never talk about them again. But these are the guys at age 25 or younger in 2019 with the following criteria: above average in ERA, and through at least 100 innings. So they were just like pretty good starting pitching prospects that were young. This is the list. Shane Bieber, he's worked out.
Yep.
Jack Flaherty, he did not work out. Lucas Giolito, I think it's fair to say that he did not work out, at least the way that they were expecting. Walker Buehler worked out, but got hurt.
Yeah.
It's the cost of doing business. Jose Barrios worked out, I would say. Herman Marquez, no. Max Fried, I think you'd probably say yes, but it's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
I know the injuries are there, but he's already shown that he's a top pitcher.
Chris Paddock, absolutely not. Sandy Alcantara, Michael Soroka, no. Dakota Hudson, no. Zach Eflin, weird way to go about it, but I'd say yes at this point. Brad Keller, no. Yanni Chirinos, no.
Who?
Jalen Beeks, no. Zach Plesac, no. 6 starters out of the, let's see here, 16 that I named have worked out in even a meaningful way from that one season that I'm talking about. And those were the guys that, like, they actually got to the big leagues and they worked for a year. So even among the group of guys that we're talking about that do develop, do get to the big leagues, and have a really solid season, about half of them end up living up to the hype from that first season. So that's where we're at right now with the Cardinals. You got to have a big glut of starting pitching prospects that you can maybe get like 2 out of the 15 that become something meaningful. And then of that 2 or 3 that get to the big league level and have a decent season, like one of them will become somebody that you can actually build around for the future. The Dodgers have this right now. They have like Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, Walker Buehler, Bobby Miller, Dustin May. They've got like 7 of them that reached the big leagues. Like 2 or 3 of them ended up working out in any meaningful way. The Cardinals have like 1 or 2 that they're looking at right now in the minor leagues. Odds are pretty strong that neither of them ends up working out.
Well, I was going to say 1 of 2 of them in the minor leagues, 1 of 2 of them, though, that aren't even in that same conversation of that upper tier of pitchers. We're talking like middle of the pack pitchers. They don't have one in their minor league system.
Somebody on the text line did make a fair point. They did have 2 of them when they had that big like wave of pitching that was coming through the minor leagues.
Wasn't that a different draft or person in charge of the draft?
Well, I'm talking about like the Jack Flaherty, Luke Weaver, Alex Reyes, that wave of pitchers, right? Dakota Hudson was coming up with them as well. They had Zach Gallen and Sandy Alcantara as part of that as well. Unfortunately, they traded them because they needed the hitting side of things. And this is where things get really difficult when the Cardinals swing back and forth. This pendulum keeps going one direction to the other.
But that's why I was asking that pitching crop. That was a different person that was identifying that talent, though, right?
I think he was gone by the time.
Wasn't that the Correa?
Oh, no, I mean, he was down in Houston at this point, so no.
Okay.
But they had the Katz, the guy that is working in Chicago now.
Yeah.
I think he was already gone, if I'm not mistaken, by the time that this crop had come through.
Because I just didn't know if that was
Flores. He was more in charge of, like, the Waka, that like early 2010 group. If I'm not mistaken, I'd have to look at the timelines on this.
Because that's the only reason I bring that up is like, and again, I'm just comparing this to the Blues because it's what in my mind right now, but like, Jarmo Kekalainen was the one that drafted the Oshis and the Berglunds and the Perrons late in the draft. And then when he was gone, it was like, okay, well, who's taking over? And then Bill Armstrong had the success. Now this Tony Feltrin is like, if the person that was in charge of finding all of those guys, we know Randy Flores is awesome at drafting these position players and the bats. Do they have the person that's identifying the right type of talent in the draft, or even evaluating those trade potentials of those younger players like they did in the past?
The answer appears to be no. But it takes time. That's the other thing that's tough about this is you have to wait like 4 years after.
So you should say we'd be patient?
Dang it.
So you're telling us Mo was right all along? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What's Chaim Bloom's catchphrase going to be? We're trading talent.
We won't trade the best player on our team.
Unless his name is Mookie Betts, in which case.
But we got Alex Verdugo back.
I mean, think about it this
Not
way.
there
Bobby Miller was the 29th overall selection in the 2020 draft. So that was 4 years ago. And now
Yeah.
he's the guy that you have really belief in. And it took a really solid 3.5 years to get there. So if the Cardinals were, for example, to draft a guy this year in the first round, they probably become a meaningful contributor to your rotation in 2027.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good luck. Coming up in 15 minutes.
Good luck.
What's the rationale to bench Zach Bolduc right now? What is it? Somebody explain this to me. We'll
Playoffs,
talk about
baby.
that coming up in 15 minutes in or out next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. T-Bone, I'm going to go with this one from the text line because I know you've got an interesting answer to it.
Okay.
From the 618.
Uh-oh.
In or out, Jordan Walker will be sent back to AAA at some point this year.
See what you did there.
Text line is not going to like what I'm going to say, but if he doesn't fix his approach to the plate and all the outfielders get healthy, I think it is more likely that he goes down than Scott. I do find it alarming that in the fourth game of the year, Eduardo Perez, who I think is one of the best baseball analysts going right now, is able to see the first pitch in Jordan Walker's first at-bat last night and go, his hip's leaking. And it is causing him on pitches outside. There's a reason the Dodgers were attacking him outside all series long. It's causing him to roll over on the ball and hit a lot of ground balls. Does that sound familiar to anybody as to why the Cardinals sent him down last year? I don't think they will, because I think they will say, let's just work through the pain this year. But we talked about it. If they could do it over again last year, would they, if everything went right for them, they didn't have injuries, would they have brought Jordan Walker with the opening day club? And you know what? I just find it interesting. We'll see if he adjusts, and we'll see if the Cardinals can fix his hip leaking out right now. Because if they don't, I think it becomes a serious conversation.
If that happens, there should be a angry mob storming Busch Stadium. There's no way you send that guy down.
Because if he's not hitting and you need to work on stuff, I think you have to do it before his development gets slowed.
You did it last year, and it's like, okay, couldn't have you figured this out up at the big league level? And I understand he was hitting last year, and right now he's not hitting. But in that sense, like, how many games are we talking here? Because in that sense, it's 4 freaking games.
How many swings are busted right now on this team?
Well, all right, let's go. Walker, Gorman, Arenado a lot. Donovan, I think, may have clicked after last night's game. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I'm forgetting.
That was pretty much it.
Well, he hasn't had a swing for a while. I think that's probably the 3 that
that's
and Gorman or Goldie all spring couldn't figure it out, and it seems like he locked himself in based on what he's.
That's why I ask how many games before we start talking about that.
I think
with
you're
Walker.
talking about probably the first month, because that'll be about the time Carlson's ready to come back.
The reason why I asked that question is because if you have to send Jordan Walker down, like if that becomes the decision, T-Bone, and there will be a lot. Alex is right. There will be a lot of criticism of such a decision. But if we get to a point where, hey, that's the right thing to do, it's actually a mark in the direction of like, hey, you guys are messing this up. Like, this is on the Cardinals. At some point, we got to talk about it and say, why does this continue to happen?
Yeah, no other organization has this many problems with all of their players.
Why did it take all of last season for Nolan Arenado to figure out his swing, and it still feels like he's fighting it today? Why does Nolan Gorman go through extended slumps at the plate where it seems like he has no idea what's coming his way? And he looks that way right now. And our answer is like, oh, we'll send these guys down. Go let them get down to AAA to get themselves right. Some of that is a confidence thing. I understand that. And it's just like, hey, when you get beat up by sliders away as often as Jordan Walker is, for example, it sucks. And when you go down to the minors, they're not going to do that as often. And then maybe by locking yourself in on a fastball, you're able to spit again on that slider down and away. It's possible. Totally fair. But some of it is just approach-driven. Some of it is mechanics-driven. And there will come a point in time where you got to say to yourself, are we putting our hitters in the best position possible to be able to succeed? You know who I miss right now? I miss Jeff Albert. Alex, what do you got for us on in or out?
I was just going to ask if that was starting to be a miss for anybody else right now. All right, boys, in or out? The Blues have 4 new forwards at the start of next season on their team.
Not include so
4 new faces that are not on the team right now.
BK, Jimmy Snuggerud count?
That would be one. That'd be a new face. Now, I'm saying right now. So yeah, from right now, that would be one.
Dalibor Dvorsky would count?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll say in. I think they have 4.
You think then they add 2 more either via trade or via free agency?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that they, based on their actions, they know they need a center. They know they need a second-line center. They've gone to this Booch thing too many times, and I think they know that he's not a center. They'll have at least 2 more. Yeah, so 4. Absolutely.
I'll say I'm in as well. I don't know if Dvorsky will be here or not, but I could see where they say, you know what, let's have the kids play this year. Dvorsky, Snuggerud, add in a second-line center. I mean, hell, if they trade Booch, they may get somebody that could come in and play in that spot as well. So I'll take my chances. I'll say I'm in.
If I put the over-under at 5, say 4.5 new players on this team next season, would you take the over?
I mean, yeah, because I took the over on 4, so.
But it's 4.5.
I mean,
You could be at 4.5.
Yes. My answer is yes.
I think this, I'm in on this one. I think this is going to be a very different looking team next year. I think you could see 5 or more new faces on this roster by next season.
That'd be fun.
T-Bone?
In or out, the Cardinals will finish a plus in defensive runs saved this season.
I'm in. I think their defense looks a lot better.
It depends. Is Ollie going to pull in the infielders all the time?
If there was anything that was encouraging from the weekend, I think it was the defense. The defense looks better. I think Wilson Contreras, by the way, looks better behind the plate.
Too.
I think Ivan Herrera looked great behind the plate over the weekend. So yeah, I think it looks a lot better.
I'm out because in T-Bone's scenario, Walker and Victor Scott are both in the minor leagues working on their bats, and Brandon Crawford's going to be playing more at shortstop. So yeah,
Walker
I think it's going to fall apart.
them defensively. Alec Burleson, by the way, looked good in the outfield.
Yeah, that throw was unbelievable.
Is tremendously slimmed down.
Yeah.
I think Alec Burleson, it was always overstated how bad he was in the outfield. I thought he was very average. He didn't get to a lot of balls, but when he got there, he was fine. Jordan Walker was worse defensively last year than Alec Burleson.
Agreed.
By a good margin.
Yeah, I would say I'm in on this, and I know it's just 4 games. It's the first week of the season. But you didn't see a play from Walker this weekend that you were like, oh boy. Victor Scott seems to have calmed things down in center. They're only going to get better in left when Newbar comes back. And I thought the infield as a whole looked solid. And I agree with you. I thought Contreras looked awesome behind the plate this weekend. He stole a couple of strikes that were low in the zone, and that new one-knee approach that the Cardinals worked with him on in this offseason. Yeah. Herrera's got to work on a little bit of the framing down low. There were a couple where I was like, dude, you can't lift the ball to your head when you catch it. But I thought overall the defense was really good this weekend, so I'd say I'm in on this.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get to a couple of yours here in just a moment. In or out, guys, Jordan Kyrou is traded this offseason.
I don't know if it's going to be him or Booch, but I think it's going to be one of those two, so I would say in.
I think I would lean towards, oh man, I'm going to go in for right now. I think they're going to do, to Alex's point earlier, I think it's going to be a master roster shuffle this offseason.
I'm still going to say out. I think if they're going to trade one of them, it's more likely they trade Booch because it's the path of least resistance. He's the guy with the shorter contract. He still has huge value around the league. And even this season, he's performed really well for the Blues, despite not living up to maybe to our expectations. He's been a good player for them. I don't know that Kyrou's value will ever be lower than it is currently right now. So,
see, I actually disagree with that. I actually think teams would be looking at that saying, okay, he's fixed his defensive problems. We could fix the offense. His defense is fixed. I actually think more teams would look at it now and say, now might be the time when to strike if the Blues are willing to move away from him.
And it's because the price is a little lower than it would be if you were to trade him, for example, after next season and he scores 30
Well,
goals.
and with Booch, it's just, I mean, you're trading for him and it's unknown how much money he wants, and you got the 30-year-old compared to the young age with it.
All right, in or out, Cardinals win the Padres series.
So they're going to get their 5, 1, and 2 starters, right?
They get Waldron, Darvish, and Musgrove. If you want a positive, Musgrove has been terrible so far.
Yeah,
this
you
year.
only lasted 4 innings for him in that game against the Giants.
2 2/3 gave up 5. 5 2/3 gave up 4.
I thought he went 4. I'll say I'm in on this one. I know I'm the ultimate negative one for this Cardinals team, but I think your offense carries you through this Padres series. I'm not too sold on this pitching, especially when you're talking about Gibson, Michaelis, and Thompson, and your bullpen being fried after the series against the Dodgers.
I'm going to say in just because Musgrove is struggling. I think they can beat Waldron tonight. I think they're going to have a tough time against Darvish, even though he's not got his best stuff right now. If Musgrove clicks, they're losing this series. If Musgrove does not and he still struggles, the Cardinals can take 2 of 3.
Have they seen Waldron before?
No, he's I think rookie.
Nolan Arenado, by the way, absolutely crushes against Yu Darvish. So if he's going to get himself back on track, that would be a good time to do it. It's limited sample size. It's only 20 at-bats, but he's been really good with it against him. I'm in on this. I do think they'll look a lot better against a team that's not the Monstars. Final thing here, guys. In or out,
Padres might.
The kid that drilled a 64-yard field goal twice against the Battlehawks over the weekend to win the game. will end up in the NFL as a result of
I've
that.
already
kick.
heard the Chiefs have called him and asked for him.
They should.
Heard the Lions.
That was
were in.
amazing, dude. I know you guys weren't watching. I'm like one of very few that was actually watching that game. That was incredible to watch live.
So I watched it when the Battlehawks took over because we had it at the game, and then the Blues game started, and so we flipped our television. And myself and our engineer, Ryan Schulte, we could not believe when somebody texted us and said that the Battlehawks lost that game. We're like, there was like 5 seconds left, and they took the lead.
I was crushing their coach when he brought him out for the field goal. I was like, "You idiot! You've got like 10 seconds left. Wow, you've got to try for this on 4th down. You absolutely should not be kicking this. You're an idiot. It's 64 yards away." And then they say, "Yeah, this kid has not made a field goal since high school." And I'm like, "What? Why are they attempting this?
Bring him out!"
And he comes out and they ice him in the first one. It goes through, and I'm like, I look around the room because I'm at Kara's family's for Easter. I'm like, did that guy just make that kick? Did that go through? And I'm like, oh no, that was definitely short. And they show the replay, definitely made it. And then he tries it again, and it's like right through the uprights. Yeah, that guy is definitely going to be in the NFL.
I saw
this
today
year.
there was a report the Lions have already reached out.
Of course.
The Rams should reach out. Their kicking was awful last year.
Cowboys should too.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more Cardinals in the 1 o'clock hour. Katie Wu, Cardinals insider for The Athletic, will join us. She joins the show at 1:30. But coming up next, the Blues are benching Zach Bolduc again tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. I understand it's a tough matchup for a young guy, but isn't that what this time of the year is for? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals dropped 3 of 4 to the Dodgers over the weekend, and tonight they start a 3-game set against San Diego. Matt Waldron will be on the mound for the Padres. Kyle Gibson gets to start for St. Louis. 8:40 will be first pitch tonight. Blues back in action, as well as they will be taking on the Edmonton Oilers. Well, pregame coverage starting at 7 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey joins Chris Gerber for Puck Drop at 8. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Turnover, Sharks in, shoot, score! Bolduc turned it over to the corner, and that's handed off to Zadina, who puts it in, and San Jose has taken a 1-0 lead on the Blues.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that's what it sounded like on Saturday night. Another turnover from Zachary Bolduc results in a goal in his own end. And Alex, I think, if you had to guess, that's probably the rationale as to why he's not in the lineup
Let's
tonight.
be kinder to the kid, though. He fell on the one turnover that resulted in a goal.
Listen, he's young.
Yeah.
He's going to make mistakes.
Come on.
I'm not crushing him for it, but his coach appears to be, because he takes him out of the lineup seemingly every time that he makes one of these turnovers that leads to a goal going the
Meanwhile,
other direction.
all of the veterans that make the same mistakes are back on the ice the next game.
Played 5 minutes in the game against Minnesota. He played 9 minutes in the game against Ottawa. His ice time is kind of all over the place. He played 15 minutes against Calgary.
Won the game, by the way.
Up and down, up and down. Alex, I don't get this. I really don't understand it. And for those that have not seen the lineup for tonight, the Blues are shifting the lines once again. And they have Toropchenko going up to the second line. Buchnevich is centering that line now. They've got Hayes, Shin, and Kapanen on the third line, and they're going with Blais, Dean, and Walker as your fourth line tonight. That means Zach Bolduc not a part of the lineup. This is the time of the year, especially now that you're, not mathematically, but for all reasonable purposes, you've been eliminated from the playoffs, basically, with that loss against San Jose on Saturday. Can you try to help me understand why Zach Bolduc is not going to play in every single opportunity possible the rest of the way?
I'd love to try and help you understand, BK, but I need somebody to try and help me understand. And look, as we always say, these guys know more about hockey than you or I can even fathom thinking about hockey. But it just makes zero sense in terms of developing younger players. And again, you're 5 points out of a playoff spot. The LA Kings helped you out to where that San Jose Sharks loss was just a wash. You lost, they lost, didn't even happen. You move forward and you're still in the same position.
The place where I'll kind of battle back a little bit there is that you have fewer games now to be able to make up those 5 points. Yep. And while it feels as if it is a wash, the opportunity of having that extra game to be able to make it up, it's gone. And so it actually does really hurt you still.
Yeah. Look, mathematically, it puts you in a very bad spot to where, you have to win every single game, and that includes Nashville tonight against Edmonton, Dallas, and the Carolina Hurricanes. But, it still doesn't make sense in terms of sitting this person. It stunts the development of these players. And again, I think it's fine when you get a scratch here and there. Hell, Robert Thomas went through this in his first year with the Blues, and it benefited him. But it just feels odd to be looking at this coming off of 2 games ago where Zach Bolduc had a huge goal for you, the first goal of that game against the Calgary Flames. And in this previous game, yes, he committed the turnover that turned into a goal, but so did 3 other players that returned into the San Jose Sharks scoring goals against you, turnovers that led to them scoring. But in that game, he also had 2 shots on goal, 4 shot attempts. He got a little bit of power play time there towards the end of the game when you were out of it. Also picked up a block shot playing on a third line that was averaging about 13 minutes. Meanwhile, Kapanen, who played 10 minutes, had 1 shot on goal and 2 shot attempts. Sammy Blais in the game, 1 shot on goal, 4 shot attempts, which is good in 7 hits. So at least it makes sense that player's in the lineup. But if you're in a position right now where you're talking about this retool and you want these younger players to be a part of it, it doesn't benefit you having Bolduc and Dean up in the press box because you want veterans in the lineup to help you to the playoffs. That's not going to do anything for you compared to at least these guys provide offense. I understand him sitting Scott Perunovich. They want him to shoot more. He will not shoot the puck. I guess I understand what they're doing with Kessel if they want more physicality on the back end. But the Bolduc, the Dean one, makes zero sense to me because if they're not playing, they should be in the minors playing.
Yeah, and I think the explanation from Bannister, like you guys had explained it to us from Bannister's point of view, I think it is just simply my job. I would disagree with this, but my job is not to worry about their development currently. It is to try and get us to the playoffs. And I think that is.
But the president of hockey operations said it's your job to do both now.
Yeah, I think that's probably wrong. But I think if you're him, he's more worried about making the playoffs because what looks better on his resume? Being a coach that came in, took a team that was clearly lost and got them to the playoffs, or a team that misses the playoffs. And for him, it probably is as simple as, man, for us to make this push, and though it is a 2 or 3% chance of us making the playoffs, I got to give it my best effort. And I think my best effort, my best team on the ice, is not playing the rookies that are going to turn the puck over. And that's what we've seen.
This gets back to the conversation that we had about the Cardinals early in the season with Mo saying, hey, I don't want Ollie making decisions for the here and now as opposed to the future, based on the fact that contractually he's incentivized to do so. That's kind of where right now you are if you're Bannister, but man, if you're Doug Armstrong, you got to look down and say, hey, man, listen, I want you to do your job. Don't get me wrong, but we need these young guys to get the experience right now. This is the time to do it, and especially with the Jimmy Snuggerud decision coming, Alex, his team lost over the weekend. Minnesota's out of the playoff, and so it sounds like, based on reports coming out of people closer to the Minnesota program, Jimmy Snuggerud is very likely going to sign with the Blues at some point in the next 24 hours. Again, this is not my reporting. This is based on the reporting that has come out of the college hockey landscape. And when he does, he will be eligible to play for the Blues as soon as their next game. Is he going to get ice time? Can we be assured that over the next 7 games, which is all he's going to be eligible to play for the Blues, do we think he's going to get top 9 minutes regularly and they're going to be able to trust him right away in this lineup? Because I don't feel like I can say that right now.
If Bolduc's not getting top 9 minutes, I don't know why Snuggerud would get top 9 minutes. And real quick, just to go back on the Bannister point that you guys were just making, I would also argue that if you're trying to put yourself in a position to get hired beyond this season, teams don't just evaluate if you make the playoffs or not. Teams evaluate how you utilize the roster, because the NHL is going young. They want younger players getting NHL opportunities faster. And if you're a coach that's not willing to give that the opportunity, and again, I don't know the behind the scenes, maybe this is more so where people are asking Bannister to get more from these guys because they're free agents afterwards and they want to know. I'm not sure on that side of it. From the outside perspective, it just seems like, man, you've got to show the ability to develop the younger players just as much as you can in playing at the NHL level. And on the Snuggerud side, again, if Zach Bolduc, who's already scored 2 goals in 17 games at the NHL level, isn't getting top 9 minutes, why would Snuggerud get it? Now, I'm sure there's going to be pressure from the front office. Look, if we're burning a first year of his contract with us, his rookie status, this kid's playing, and he's playing top 6 minutes every single game.
He plays on the right side, right?
He's a right winger, yeah.
So where are you going on the right side?
Well,
4th line.
My gut would say that the right winger on the 3rd line tonight would be out of the lineup while Jimmy Snuggerud jumps in.
Yeah, but you're definitely not getting him top 6 minutes. It's not jumping Jake Neighbors unless they want to go that route, I guess.
Well, Neighbors can play the left side. Remember, we've learned that. We've learned that he can do that.
Have we learned that?
No. I mean, if Snuggerud signs here, and here's the thing that people do need to understand, as much as it feels like it's the Blues and they get to, this is also a Snuggerud decision.
Absolutely. It's more a Snuggerud decision than a Blues decision.
Snuggerud's agent, which I'm imagining he's already done this, is basically telling the Blues, the only way we sign with you is if you sign us now, and we don't want to go to a amateur tryout to go play in the Springfield Thunderbirds. Now, the Blues are probably pushing for that because the Thunderbirds right now are 2 points out of a playoff spot. So that is very similar to what Colton Parayko did his first year with the Blues, where he came out of Alaska, signed to the ATO, played 17 games for the Wolves, and then made the playoffs and played in his first round and then got eliminated. Next year, he was on the NHL roster. But this has nothing to do with the Blues wanting to burn a year of his entry. This has everything to do with Jimmy Snuggerud saying, I'm either on the NHL or I'm going back to Minnesota.
He's got the leverage.
Yeah, if I'm him, I'm doing that.
All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we got to talk about another young player that really impressed over the weekend. I don't think Victor Scott could have done anything more to convince us that he's ready for the show than what we saw over the weekend. That's coming up at 1 o'clock. But next, let's dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It is time to dive into the junk drawer. And guys, over the weekend, I'm not a huge NASCAR observer. However, when I see a man in a video throwing his bumper at another car, yeah, that'll get me to tune in. Give this a listen.
Frustration here. First, he's going to finish tearing the rear bumper cover off his car and then wait for Dawson Cram, and his timing and throw was pretty impeccable here.
Yeah, he did a good job at this right here. Boom, right in the windshield.
I think I would have left my driver gloves on. OSHA would not have approved pulling that bumper cover off without the glove. OSHA has a problem with no gloves. NASCAR has a problem with walking down near traffic, and I'm sure he'll get a phone call and maybe some other items out of it.
I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I'm saying I understand.
Didn't even think about that. You're walking in the middle of ongoing traffic of dudes going 150 plus miles an hour.
For those that didn't see it, there was a NASCAR driver who spun out. His car's completely wrecked. It's over for him. His car's getting worked on. They're trying to take it off of the track. They're driving under caution. And as the cars come by for their next lap, as they're under caution, this dude pulls his rear bumper, which is like hanging on by a thread at this point, off of his car, sees the dude that crashed it or that caused the wreck, and like gets ready to throw his bumper into the windshield, trying to crash the windshield in on the guy. When I saw this, all I could think to myself was, that is Alex. Roughly 7 times a day on our show, anytime that I say, Alex, here's why I disagree.
If you ever think to yourself, I wonder what Alex is like on the golf course, go watch that video and just take bumper for golf club, because that's typically what I do. And it's taken out on a tree.
You should see counseling.
Believe me, anger management has totally been in the conversation. I feel like a family, what's that called? A family intervention is coming sooner or later with my entire family, because they see the anger management that takes place. I'm not that dumb, because I don't know if I'd carry a bumper in the middle of ongoing traffic in the middle of NASCAR. But if I was on the side of the road and somebody did that to me, yeah, I would take the bumper off and chuck it at somebody's car.
Yeah. When BK sent this text, I was driving home from my play-by-play gig this weekend.
And you crashed.
And all
so
I saw was
this
this is something that Alex would do, and I was like, oh boy, I can't imagine what this is. I saw the video and I just immediately went, yep, that's definitely an Alex move.
Look, man, I'm all about honesty here, and I will not deny that.
All right, the one other thing, and T-Bone, you can go ahead and take that down that bet for us today. I do want to bring this up. Vontae Davis, who is a former NFL corner, he's 35 years old. He was found dead earlier today in a home. And if you don't remember, Vontae Davis, first of all, a really good NFL cornerback for a number of years. One of the things that a lot of people remember him for is one of the funniest stories ever in an NFL game. There's a tweet going around right now with a video of LaShawn McCoy and Tre'Davious White talking about this experience. It's well worth your minute and a half of them explaining what happened here. Vontae Davis, back in 2018, played one game for the Buffalo Bills. At the time, he was 30 years old. And Alex, at halftime of that one game with the Bills, the season opener, he said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I am retiring. One of the greatest stories ever in an NFL game, but unfortunately today he was found dead at the age of 35. We'll try to update you on that story if we get any more details. They say that there was no foul play involved, but man, some terrible news in the NFL. Former NFL cornerback with the Dolphins, the Colts, and very briefly the Buffalo Bills, Vontae Davis, found dead earlier today. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get into some NCAA tournament quick hitters. Want to talk about T-Bone's Illini one more time, and what can we learn from this year's Final Four? What are the big lessons to be learned from this group of teams that remains? We'll talk about it at 1:15. Victor Scott next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. We got to tell you about our friends over at Green Envy Lawn Care. Alex, as I walk around my neighborhood right now, the rain season has officially arrived. It's taken place today. It's taken place over the last couple of weeks. And for some yards, you can't see any of the results of that. This should be the time where that seed that you put down in the fall, it's starting to sprout. You can see that luscious green lawn. And for me, that is exactly the case because Green Envy Lawn Care helped me out. They put the seed down in the fall, they aerated my yard, and then in the spring, they put down all that fertilizer that makes sure that I get that Green Envy Lawn Care, that green grass that you're looking for. Alex, you can do that too by giving them a call today.
I did it. And look, I cut it over the weekend. And you ever have those moments where when you finish cutting it, you just sit on the patio and you look at it and you're like, damn, that looks good. That's what Green Envy has done. And when BK says it's green, it's not only green, it is thick grass, which is awesome for your backyard. They don't have they take care of the crabgrass, the spring weeds that we're going to get with all of the rain. So make sure you get the professionals out to take care of your lawn. Give them a call today. They're open 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, Saturday from 9 to 1. Tell them BK and Ferrario sent you. 636-757-1600. That's 636-757-1600.
We were all wondering what we were going to be able to see from Victor Scott in the first weekend of the season. You're going up against quality pitching. You're going up against one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. Are you really going to be able to make the impact that we were hoping? Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, I don't think he could have shown you anything more. There are going to be breaking balls that frustrate him at the plate. He's going to have some problems with that at the plate. But that being said, his defense in center field is every bit as good as it was expected to be. His speed makes the defenders go crazy. Multiple errors that were forced based on the fact that he's just sprinting to first quicker than most are prepared for when he gets on. And then when you get him to second base, he's a threat to score on any play that gets out of the infield. That play that he scored from, man, I don't know how many players in Major League Baseball make that look as easy as he did. And I think the list is pretty short of guys that actually make it home and make it home without really worrying about the throw to home. He made it there in 7 seconds. He leads the team in runs scored. He has 3 of them, despite having the fewest at-bats of the guys that played in all 4 games over the weekend. And I also think that's noteworthy, too. They trusted him to play in all 4 games over the weekend, a feat that you cannot say right now about Mason Wynn or Jordan Walker, for example. I don't know what he's going to look like in this next series. I don't know if what we saw from him against the Dodgers was sustainable, although I feel like most of what we saw from him at the plate felt pretty sustainable. But if we continue to see something similar the rest of the way, that's not a guy that I want replaced in my lineup. That's a guy that I'm going to be building around for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, someone just texted in from the 618 saying he's only hitting 143. I don't care, because everything else about his game makes this team better than what they probably should be. I mean, without Victor Scott, I don't know if we're talking about a win.
Also, he's got a 143 on base percentage, batting average, but that doesn't take into account the multiple errors that he threw that allowed him to get on base.
I just look at it and then I compare it to the field of what you'd be getting when they return. And as much as we loved Dylan Carlson's spring training, I don't know if that bat's going to carry over into Major League Baseball. I mean, some of the guys that were hitting great in spring didn't carry over to the MLB start of the season. So I would give Victor Scott the advantage there because of his speed and because of his defense and that base running threat that obviously disrupts the pitcher when he gets on base. And then we're talking Tommy Edman. And we still don't know when Tommy Edman is going to be back / if he's going to be fully healthy. And even if he returns, I still think Victor Scott's a better center fielder than him, and he's a better base runner than him. So I really don't care. I know that the off-speed stuff and the breaking balls are going to disrupt him. I'd rather him figure it out up here as he still has an impact on the team than send him down and then be average at best at center field.
Yeah, he has the thing that we talked about in spring training. His speed is dynamic enough to cause havoc in a game. And you saw that this weekend. And that was the most impressive part. Look, he didn't have to make any spectacular play in the outfield. He was good in the outfield, made all the routine plays. Nothing really pushed him to go, whoa, that was awesome. It's clear he struggles against breaking balls. But even the ball, like some of the fastballs, I know the texture mentioned the 143 batting average. He had 2 really hard hit balls in the game I think it was Saturday, where he didn't end up getting on base. He went over, but he hit the fastball very well. It's clear he can time a fastball, and it's clear that his eye is pretty good, in my opinion, through 4 games. I mean, being down in the count 0-2 to, I think it was Vesa that was pitching at the time, and to lay off a couple breaking balls that were low and end up fighting back from down 0-2 to draw a walk at his age of 23 years old in his first major league season, not even 10 at-bats in, that's really impressive. That tells me that that's a guy that, even if it takes him maybe a full year to adjust to the breaking ball here at the big league level, man, his eye is good enough to where at some point he's going to figure it out.
Now, exit velo is not everything, but it does help. And here are some of his exit velos. And by the way, these are all coming off of some kind of fastball. 4-seamer, sinker, or cutter. 103, 101, 98, 97, 94, 93.
Only 2 not hard hit balls.
And of those 2, they were 93 miles an hour. Now, there's others like 89 miles per hour, 83, and 73. Those are the other 3 batted balls that I did not mention there. Those came, by the way, on changeup, slider, sinker. So
at least he made contact.
It's pretty clear what he's doing. He's hunting for fastballs right now, and there will come a point in time where teams just stop throwing him fastballs until he proves that he can make contact with something else. But right now, while he's still getting them and being at the bottom of the lineup, that's going to help. I do think it's worth noting he's hitting the ball hard. This is not just a guy that's going up there and acting like he's some kind of a slap hitter and he's going to get out regularly by grounding out weakly to second base. That's not who Victor Scott is. He's hitting the ball hard. He's making decent contact. And if he continues to do this, those are going to drop more often than not for hits. And you're going to start getting some more of those results. He's not a guy that's striking out every time he's going up there. And when he makes contact, it's 84 miles an hour, grounder to second, grounder to second. He's been pretty decent in terms of the process at the plate. And when you add in the speed that he's able to beat out a grounder to the shortstop that's hit slowly because it's hard to be able to throw him out, when you add in the fact that he's always a threat to steal from first to second.
He just disrupts the pitcher on the mound, man.
And when he gets to second, hot damn, good luck. If the next guy hits any kind of a single to the outfield, he's going to score on it. You have to be able to manufacture runs in Major League Baseball, and Victor Scott is a walking, breathing, running, manufactured run at all times. So, yeah, he's the guy that I want in my lineup as much as humanly possible. That being said, none of this matters if the middle of the order doesn't get going, guys. Right now, Nolan Arenado looks lost. Nolan Gorman doesn't look great at the plate. You mentioned earlier today that Jordan Walker looks out of sorts right now. if those three players, and Brendan Donovan up until yesterday kind of looked out of his element as well. Yesterday seemed like he kind of started to get locked in. If those three guys in the middle of your order don't start hitting, then none of the rest of this matters. Doesn't matter what Mason Wynn does, if they start him or Brandon Crawford. It doesn't matter what they decide to do in center field. It doesn't matter what the pitching staff does. This team was always going to be heavily reliant on the middle of its order getting the kinds of results that you were looking for, and right now you're not getting that.
Yeah, and that's why we had guys like Goldschmidt, Arenado, even Gorman in like our top 5 of our 20 most important Cardinals. Those guys got to start driving in runs. And look, I know it's just 4 games into the year and they face good pitching, and I think good pitching will always shut down a good offense, especially when an ace has their A game. But, man, they had multiple opportunities once you get to the bullpen to kind of hopefully put that game away, and it didn't happen. And Arenado, to your point, he's the guy that they got to get going and get going quickly. They can't have this team is at its best when Goldie and Arenado are clicking at the same time, but for most of their time together, they haven't been. Yep. You know, it feels like every year there is like Goldie starts off hot while Arenado struggles, and then when Arenado figures it out, Goldie gets cold. They've got to get those guys going in lockstep for this lineup to reach its potential.
I really feel like this falls on Nolan Arenado, and I might be reading too much into this, but it just feels like with what the offseason was and all of the noise around Nolan Arenado and wanting to bring in the guys that made it a veteran locker room and how the young players took over, if Arenado struggles, it feels like this entire team crumbles. It feels like the foundation breaks completely with the team if you don't have him hitting, and I understand a lot of that is because he's in the middle of the lineup, and yeah, you've got guys that can carry that load. But, man, when you want to talk about momentum just completely falling off for the Cardinals is if Arenado becomes a liability, at least in offense, in the middle of your lineup.
You got to have it. We did our 20 most important Cardinals list, and Goldie and Arenado were right there, 2-3. Right now among the guys that are eligible to be playing, not on the injured list. They're 1 and 2 because Sonny Gray was at number 1 on our list. And Paul Goldschmidt's been mostly really solid. He's been good early on this season, despite what happened in spring training. That did not carry over for him into the regular season. But for Gorman, Arenado, Walker, up until yesterday, what you saw out of Brendan Donovan as well, they just haven't been good enough. And it's not going to get a whole lot easier, guys. Like for the pitching staff, they should be able. They did not get to ease into the season. They did with their workload, but not against the opponent. The Dodgers lineup, good luck. Everybody's going to struggle against that top, really 6 in their order. Now it gets a little easier for your pitching. You got some stars in San Diego, got a couple of stars in Philadelphia, got some stars in Arizona, but it's not the same depth, and the level of stardom is not quite Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman. That's the likes of which we haven't seen. They showed the graphic last night since like 1927. So, yeah, pretty good. But when you look at what your pitching is going to have, that's where things should start to get a little better. It should get a little better.
You hesitated there a couple of times.
It's supposed to, man. Like, this is what...
You sound like a kid that was like, it was supposed to work out. This is what we planned for.
The lineup's going to have some tough goes of it, man. The pitching is not going to get a whole lot easier from the opposition. Like, man, you're going to be going up against Wheeler and Nola, it looks like, for Philadelphia. They're scheduled to face off against you. That's not going to be fun.
That's a series win.
You've got Darvish and Musgrove, and I understand that they have not had their best stuff so far this season. At any point, it can click for them, and when it does, it's going to be impressive. Like, those guys are really good Major League starters, and they can shut down any lineup they go against when they have their best stuff on any given day. So, yeah, Miami has a bunch of really good young arms. They're going to give you some problems in that series as well. Arizona, same thing. They've got a bunch of arms that they can throw at you right now. Thought, who was a playoff hero, is scheduled to start against you in the opening one of that series. So, like, yeah, man, it's not going to be super easy for the lineup, but this is where it gets back to, if you're going to be able to believe in this lineup, they've got to be able to win against these kinds of pitchers. They've got to. Because this is what you're seeing in the postseason, is these kinds of teams with these kinds of starters. And until they show you that they can consistently produce runs, a lot of people on our text line are going to be skeptical. T-Bone's going to be skeptical. He's going to say pitching wins and defense wins. And I'm going to sit here and say it, but this lineup might be back to 2013 form. And
mine's only worked for
he's going to be right on the bureau.
Existed.
Yeah, BK is like, it's supposed to be if you look at all of this. It's not, well, it is this.
Their formula this year is the pitching doesn't have to be great. It's just got to hold up, and it's got to keep the game close. And then where they're going to have to win is the offense is going to have to beat the opponent's bullpen while your bullpen can hold strong.
The Cardinals' offense has to consistently produce 4 runs.
Yeah,
at least.
That doesn't happen when you're striking out 43 times in 4 games.
Doesn't help when Tyler O'Neill has more home runs than your entire team does.
Did you see that he said that he feels like he's been in Boston forever? It's just a matter of being somewhere where he felt wanted.
Just
And,
wait
of
until
course,
he plays in
Ollie wasn't a
Tampa.
very wanting individual, you know?
I can't wait till Cora calls him out.
Ollie's like, man, he doesn't hustle around third.
He wasn't. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, okay.
Boston's first trip down to Tampa Bay, May 20th. Be interesting to see if he plays in that game. Coming up in about 15 minutes, Katie Wu, Cardinals insider for The Athletic. She was in L.A. She got the explanations from Ollie Marmol. I'm going to put her in the very unenviable position of trying to explain some of Ollie Marmol's decisions from this weekend. We'll talk to Katie about that coming up in 15 minutes in our weekly therapy session with Katie Wu. But coming up next, time for some NCAA tournament quick hitters, including what happened to the Illini? How's T-Bone feeling after his team got absolutely mollywopped on Saturday? And what can we learn from this year's Final Four? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my friends over at Rhino Shield when it comes to the exterior of your home, especially this time of the year when you're outside more, you're enjoying the outside. The look of your house is important because you don't want to be looking at an eyesore. And let me tell you, I personally had that with my house when we moved in 3 years ago. And, of course, we called Darren with Rhino Shield. He had come out, explained the process to me. And, look, I was the guy that thought, you know, I could do it myself and save money. I didn't realize that the coating process that Rhino Shield uses is a 2 to 3 coating process. So what that means is it lasts a lot longer than what you're going to do if you purchase paint over the counter and say you're going to do it yourself, because Rhino Shield's product is 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. So with all the weather conditions we get in the spring, the summer, the fall, even the winter, you know you're taken care of with Rhino Shield. They back that with a 25-year transferable warranty. The work that they do is incredible. They were out there on a Friday, done Saturday evening, and my house has never looked better. So give Darren a call today. Have him come out, free estimate, and tell him I sent you, Alex Ferrario, with Rhino Shield. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
5-0 Connecticut run. Goody 3. Rebound picked up by Newton. 16 straight misses. Columbia inside. The dunk, the foul. Count it.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It's not every day that you see a team go on a 30-0 run in an NCAA
Did
tournament
Illinois do
game.
that?
Unfortunately for Illini, that is exactly what happened against them over the weekend. And I have no ill will towards Illinois for that. Man, that's a juggernaut that you just saw. UConn is a buzzsaw that I think is going to beat just about anybody that they put in front of them on Saturday. When they play like that, good luck. The 30-0 run on Saturday was the program's longest since it started a game versus New Hampshire 32-0 in 1990. It was their longest and most sustained run in more than 30 years. So, T-Bone, you're a resident Illini fan. How did you feel after watching that game against UConn?
I wasn't, like, extremely disappointed. Like, I wasn't upset. Like, I figured the Illini would lose that game. I remember on Friday he asked me, like, how are you feeling? I think I said I was, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 3 was where I was at for a win. My frustration, though, for the Illini was I didn't feel like there were enough adjustments offensively. I don't think they are a 30-point worse team than UConn. I truly do not. I know you're going to say they were that day. No, they didn't play. Well, that was their worst game of the season, and I don't even think some of it was all on UConn. I think some of it was a lack of adjustments. You know, continuously going after the big man inside when he's playing incredible defense is stupid. Like, let's just say it as it is. It was poor decision-making. They did not, and I don't even think it was on Underwood. I didn't have much of an issue with what Underwood did. I thought he adjusted quickly and said, Ty Rodgers can't shoot a jumper and they're putting the big man on him. All right, it's time for us to pull Ty Rodgers. He played a total of 8 minutes in that game, and he's a guy that started all season long for the Illini. I thought he could have gone to Danger a little sooner to try and help alleviate some of the pressure on Hawkins, but part of it was they probably just were never going to stop clinging on the offensive end for him. The issue for the Illini offensively was they needed to get out and run more. They needed to get the ball in Shannon's hands in transition faster. They didn't do that as much as they should have, and they continued to attack the inside rather than, okay, let's get inside, kick out for some threes. By the time they started to do that, it was too late, and then those shots weren't falling. The game was over by the time they truly adjusted to the defense that UConn was playing. I totally agree that UConn's the better team and was probably winning that game 98 out of 100 times. Illini probably win 1 out of 100. The reason that I'm a little disappointed is that other time that I didn't mention was the blowout that we saw. I thought that was the worst game of the Illini season.
Yeah, Illinois scored 14 points in 22 Klingon minutes. They went 0 for 19 shots. When he contested them, you weren't beating them that day, man. You weren't even making that thing competitive. And you're right, they should have probably gone away from the interior earlier than they did. But that's how they play. Like, Terrence Shannon is a slasher, or he shoots contested jump shots. And on Saturday night, he went 2 for 12 from the field and scored 8 points. If Terrence Shannon scores 8 points in any game, we knew this team did not have the capability to really win a game like that. And then when you have him shooting the way that he did and Coleman Hawkins going 2 for 10 from the field with 5 points, you're done. Game over. There's no coming back from something like that. Those two guys combined were 1 for 8 from three-point land as well. And they were never going to be able to win that game. UConn destroyed them. And whether I think that they would have beaten anybody that day and Illinois was at fault, UConn deserves credit, whatever we think that the credit and blame lies, UConn proved once again that they are very clearly the best team in the country right now, and they have a really good chance to go back-to-back for the first time since the Florida team did it more than 15 years ago. The one thing potentially standing in their way is Purdue, and when I look at this Final Four, it's like 2 teams that are really good that deserve to be here, and then 2 other teams that I can't explain it. I can't explain how Alabama is still standing at this point.
Should have lost the Grand Canyon.
They don't have, they like opt out of defense. They do not play on the defensive side of the ball, but their path has allowed for this to take place. You play against Charleston, you play against Grand Canyon, play against Clemson. Those are not the most difficult paths there. They did beat North Carolina. North Carolina had a lot to do with that because they just kept settling for three-point shots, couldn't seem to make any of them, and ended up losing that one by a couple of points. I can't believe Alabama is still standing. But when I look at it, it's a very clear Connecticut, Purdue, and then Alabama, and then I do want to talk a little bit about NC State. This is one of the coolest runs that we've seen in a tournament in a really long time, guys.
And they actually have a player that I think everybody gravitates towards.
DJ Burns is now getting conversations about, like, hey, could that guy be an offensive tackle in the NFL?
Which is
like,
wild.
There are real NFL teams that are apparently, like, reaching out and saying, hey, would you be interested in working out for us? Could we maybe see if this works? If you remember, the Mo Alley Cox, the tight end for the Indianapolis Colts, he played basketball in college, and a bunch of teams were like, hey, we saw you in the tournament. Would you want to play tight end?
Didn't Jimmy Graham do that?
He was a basketball player in college
too,
as
wasn't
well. So I'll be interested to see if something comes out of that. NC State survived against Virginia because of a banked three-pointer at the buzzer that kept their season alive to send that game to overtime in the ACC tournament. If they lose that game, if that shot didn't go in the ACC tournament, they're done. They're going home. Their coach is probably fired. And instead, they go to overtime. They end up winning that game. Then they go to the ACC championship game, beat North Carolina in that one. And since then, nobody can stop them. Texas Tech, Oakland, Marquette, Duke. This is a real run going up against legit opponents. And they have beat anybody that you throw against them. I'm surprised they're still playing. Do you give them any chance against Purdue, Alex?
I do, actually. I think Purdue's the better team. But the way that NC State operates is a physical brand of basketball, and I wonder what that looks like against Purdue. I don't think Purdue has really played a physical game, and I haven't watched a whole lot of Purdue. I've caught games here and there, but like the way NC State played last night against Duke was a grind to get through. So I'm curious to see. I mean, that's big man on big man right there, and who comes away with the victory. I at least give NC State a chance compared to UConn. I think Alabama should be written off before the game even starts. Anybody from that bracket, in my opinion, or that portion of the bracket should have been written off. But UConn is night and day better. I think NC State actually makes it a game.
Yeah, I think they have a shot. The reason I say that is because that Klingon against Coleman Hawkins, the reason I thought Hawkins would stand a chance against him, because I saw him hold his own fairly well against Edey. Now, Edey did get his points, like he's going to score, but Hawkins held his own in those games. But when I see that Edey has trouble against Hawkins, and then I watch Klingon just destroy Hawkins, it makes me wonder, okay, how is Edey going to handle the big man from NC State?
DJ Burns.
I don't know how he's going to. I think if it's a physical game and he's able to kind of slow down Edey and then kind of go after and force Edey to play physical brand defensively and kind of wear him down on that end of the floor, I think NC State's got a shot. I do think the depth of scoring for Purdue is way better than what NC State is, and it's the reason that I picked them to win the tournament before I went, oh crap, UConn's a buzzsaw, was because they have guards that can shoot the three, and if those guards play well, they're going to be able to beat NC State.
I do think Tennessee gave them a pretty decent battle in that regard. Like they have some physicality, so that tested them in a way that will prepare them for what NC State has to offer to a degree. But DJ Burns, man, he's just on a heater right now. He's been amazing. He has like 4 new endorsements based on his star power that he's accumulated through the NCAA tournament. That's what makes this tournament so great, man. We can get stories like this that just come out of nowhere. Nobody was talking about NC State this year, nor should you have. They were not a very good basketball team in the ACC. They finished with a losing record in conference play, and now here they are playing in the Final Four. Just an awesome story from this NCAA tournament. The one other thing that I wanted to get to, it's on the women's side of things. Guys, is going to be one of probably the most watched college basketball game of the 2024 calendar year is going to take place on the women's side with LSU taking on Iowa. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. Angel Reese has been out in the media over the last couple of days saying, hey, listen, if you need me to be the villain, I'm willing to play that role. When I get between the lines, I'm super competitive. I actually like Caitlin Clark. She's like, we get along pretty well. But yeah, when we get onto the court, I'm not friends with anybody that's on the opposing team. So yeah, I'm going to talk trash to her. We're going to get in each other's faces, and we're going to go play a good game of basketball. I can't wait to watch this, man. I'm going to be locked in tonight. I think that's probably going to get my big screen treatment.
Hey-o.
And I'll have the Blues and the Cardinals on the side screens. But
Ollie gets the side screen treatment, huh?
The game will be mostly over by the time that the Cardinals play tonight because they're on the West Coast.
The Cardinals might also be potentially over by the time that game's almost done.
Do you have a favorite in this one between LSU and Iowa? It's basically a pick 'em.
I really don't, to be honest with you. I'm like you, though. I think anytime you get, and I don't even, I guess you call it a rivalry because you have 2 of the best players in the game going head to head. But anytime you have this type of build up, and we were talking about this in the commercial break, when you've got 2 teams that you look at it and you say, man, it would be perfect if they went head to head against each other, and they actually get there, I think the hype is going to be better than any men's basketball game that we've seen throughout this tournament.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would take Iowa. I think Caitlin Clark's playing the best she's ever played, and that's saying something because she's a great basketball player. I would take Iowa in this one, and then don't forget you've got a fun one in the late slate as well. Paige Buchers, is that how you pronounce her last name? Playing against USC, who's got some stars talent. Now, granted, they got to fix that court out there in Portland where the three-point lines
amazing. I can't
were
believe that
not
really
lined
happened.
up. But look, I think both those games are going to be great. I think they're going to shatter some records tonight in terms of viewership. I would take UConn over USC, by the way. I think they get it done.
I have a bet on USC to win the tournament, so I hope that they win.
I feel so good about picking UConn just now.
Did you see that story, by the way, Alex?
No.
In Portland, in the women's tournament, for the first two rounds, on one side, they were using the men's three-point line. On the other side, they were using the women's three-point line. And apparently nobody ever realized this.
Nobody knew the difference.
The players were like, hey, this is weird. I felt really good over there shooting from three, and over here it doesn't quite feel the same.
What's going on right now?
So that's the late game as well. Iowa versus LSU. I'm going to take LSU by 12 in this one. I think LSU
12?
I think LSU gets it done
Someone's
tonight.
siding their bets.
Coming up next, Katie Wu, Cardinals insider for The Athletic.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Ted Drew's famous frozen custard that is now open for its 95th season just off of Chippewa. You know Ted Drew's frozen custard. It's been open since 1929. It's a St. Louis tradition, a staple. People know about it, but you forget every once in a while that, man, you know what would be great right now? Just the opportunity to go out and enjoy time with family, with friends at Ted Drew's. And look, when you get out there, you know all of the flavors that you can mix and match with. The quality of it is always at its best. Ted Drew's is renowned for its high-quality frozen custard. It's made with the finest ingredients. My wife's favorite, the s'more. You can get the City Red for City SC, the Blue Note for the Blues, whatever flavors you want. You can buy it in the quart. You could take it home with you. And while you're out there, make sure you walk across the parking lot to check out the Ted Drew's gift shop. It's got tons of Ted Drew's apparel. It's got kids and adult sizes, hats, drinkware, gift cards. That's the perfect gift for whatever you need. It's all out at Ted Drew's. So get on out there, start those traditions for the 2024 season right away. Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
Terry Hendricks, the Earth Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals dropped 3 of 4 over the weekend to the LA Dodgers, and they're back in action tonight as they start a 3-game set at the San Diego Padres. Matt Waldron will get the start for San Diego. Kyle Gibson on the mound for the Cardinals. 8:40 will be first pitch tonight. And the Blues back in action as well as they take on the Edmonton Oilers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 7 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. And then Joey joins Chris Gerber for Puck Drop at 8. This sports update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, let's go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend, the Cardinals insider for The Athletic. She is Katie Wu. She was out in Los Angeles covering the Cardinals as they took on the Dodgers in their opening series of the season. The Cardinals, of course, lose 3 out of the 4. The one win was a fun one on Saturday night. There was a wild way to get there, but they win it nonetheless. Katie joins us now on the 101 ESPN hotline. Katie, let's start with the obvious. What was your biggest takeaway from the opening series against the Dodgers? What did you learn about this team in the first 4 games of the season?
Well, I think the Cardinals overall are very happy that series is over. But I think we knew coming into the season the Cardinals got a heck of a draw with their series opener, right? And we also knew as the spring transpired, the Cardinals were not going to roll out their A-team. And I think it just kind of showed what the very best in baseball looks like compared to a team that's down already some key players, and the discrepancies between that lineup and the Cardinals lineup. I mean, we can go over decision and decision over the last 4 games that led to this 1-3 record, but sometimes you just get outplayed, and the Dodgers, they're going to outplay a lot of baseball teams this year.
So, Katie, as I was watching it over the weekend, and you know me, I'm pretty negative about the Cardinals, so I had that mindset going into those games. But I was really impressed by watching Lance Lynn pitch his way out of that disaster that could have been, and then how Steven Matz performed. The problem with that is the other flip of the coin was the bullpen struggled, and I thought that was the area of strength for this team this season.
Yeah, it's interesting because I really thought that Lance Lynn was on his way to a quality start. He looked great, and he was also very entertaining. It's been a minute since we've had some fire shown on the field like that.
About Katie Jack did it all the time.
This is a different kind of fire. But I would like to break down the bullpen a little bit, and I tried to do this yesterday because as that ball flies off of Max Muncy's bat in the bottom of the 8th inning, I'm pretty sure St. Louis exploded. Like, I'm pretty sure I could feel it from my seat at Dodger Stadium. And it's so easy to say, the bullpen did it again. This is supposed to be a strength for this team. They blew another save. They blew another lead. We can go on and on about it. But the Cardinals had put themselves in a significant hole with their usage because they were down so many arms. Steven Matz entered the game on an 80-pitch limit. That was obviously not going to be communicated before the game for strategic reasons. If the Dodgers find out Steven Matz is on a pitch limit, well, guess what? They're not swinging the bat at all. They're going to make him work counts. Then Steven's out of the game by what, the 3rd, 4th inning? And the Cardinals have to cover innings they already don't have. You don't have Giovanni Gallegos. You don't have Jojo Romero. You don't have Matthew Liberatore. And you have the rest of the guys mostly for 1-inning tops or certain scenarios. So was that the matchup anyone wanted in the bottom of the 8th with John King, who, by the way, arrived at Dodger Stadium from Memphis like an hour before? No, probably not. But they didn't have any other options, and that, I think, is more of a testament to why it is so important to get quality starts and length from a rotation that was designed to deliver quality starts and length.
I could also say, Katie, as in addition to that, because that's basically what I said for our open today, I do think part of it was self-inflicted as well. With them pitching Giovanni Gallegos in a 5-0 game on Friday night, that puts him behind the 8 ball to not be available for you on Sunday. I know you gotta take what's at hand for you, but like that was a perfect opportunity for them to go to Fernandez, for example. I know they don't want to go to him in the middle of an inning, but they also don't want to go to him in a close game. So like, eventually you've got to go to him, and if they're not going to go to him there, it's kind of a waste of a roster spot, frankly.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And we were saying this up in the press box on Friday. I did not love seeing Giovanni Gallegos come in the 6th down 5. And I understand the need to keep guys fresh, but, there's other opportunities for that. And I also understand you can't manage a bullpen in hindsight. But pitching Gio there instead of Fernandez, I'm not sure what that relays in terms of why Fernandez is on this roster. And I know his Rule 5 status clearly complicates things. He has to stay on the roster or there's a whole mess. Maybe he goes back to Boston. It's a transaction issue. I totally get it. But if you're not willing to go to Fernandez in that spot, when are you? Because now, in a game that the Cardinals probably were not going to win on Friday, but I also understand not punting on games. But because of Giovanni's usage on Friday, they don't have him for a game they really probably should have won on Sunday, and it just creates that trickle-down effect. So I hear, again, cannot manage a bullpen in hindsight. I didn't love seeing Gio in that spot on Friday, especially if the Cardinals knew what they did about Matz at the time, which they did. Of course, no one can predict the rain. Maybe they went out there with a strategy that Lance is going to go out there and shove, and to their credit, for his limited innings, he did. But, yeah, just overall, I think it further underscores, again, the Cardinals need to rely on their innings-eating rotation. Otherwise, you're going to see the whole slew of problems that we saw on the pitching side last year.
We're talking to Katie Wu here on 101 ESPN. Katie, you know my thoughts about Ollie Marmol. I'm one of the very few believers still that he can be a good manager in Major League Baseball, but I really disliked the way that he approached the game on Saturday, generally speaking. I did not like taking Jordan Walker out of the lineup entirely and giving him an off day when we're 3 games into the regular season. I don't have a problem with their rest thing that they do with Arenado, Goldie. Makes sense. The older guys, you want to get them some rest. I totally understand that. But 3 games into the year, taking Walker out of the lineup felt weird to me. And then them not using Mason Wynn at shortstop felt even stranger to me, because at least that guy's good defensively. And then to not use either of them or Wilson Contreras, either in a pinch hitting role for Contreras/Walker or in a defensive replacement role for Mason Wynn late in that game, that also felt off to me. You were there. You got the explanations from Ollie Marmol. We were not. How did he explain those choices?
Yeah, those are fair, especially when we talk about, the need to get reps every day and keep your young guys in it. But also, Ollie was really committed to resting some of these guys early, because let's think about the depth options beyond this current roster in AAA. Let's pause and think about it. There's not much. So I think the Cardinals have to take a conservative approach to playing time right now, because they're down so many guys. And resting Mason and resting Jordan, Wilson, that makes a little bit more sense because obviously he's catching.
Sure, that makes sense.
I understood where Ollie was coming from, but it was really hard for him to not put Mason in that game. That's what he was telling us Saturday night. He had a place for him in the 10th. If that spot came up again, they were going to have to use him as the automatic runner, or the 11th, I should say, excuse me. But he said it was, he really wanted to give Mason a full day. He really didn't want to go back on what he'd said earlier to his players on getting a full rest day, but it was going to be really, really hard. So he clearly wanted to, but there was a game plan and a rest plan and a health plan that they put into place, and he's sticking to it. Because imagine if this Cardinals lineup, which has its struggles already that I'm sure we're going to get into, loses one more key guy. Then what? So, yes, I understand all of the criticisms there are valid. They're valid arguments, especially because Siani went in as a defensive replacement earlier in that game, and you are playing for a 1-run lead. But at the same time, I can understand why the Cardinals feel the need to rest guys, knowing just how barren the options are in AAA right now.
But like Mason Wynn played 140 games last year and was fine. And like Jordan Walker, even when he was off last year, was still getting designated hitting opportunities. And you have an off day every single week for the first 6 weeks of the season. I don't know. I'm getting mad at you, Katie. This is not your fault. I'm yelling at the messenger right now. But
he does that, Katie.
I really don't understand that move. But Alex, what do you have? Sorry.
Oh no, I thought he was just going to keep me down here, Katie, because he wanted to try and go the optimistic route. I mean, you mentioned that lineup though. Like, it's not a good look. And again, I understand it's the Dodgers. You're talking about the talent that they have. But what was it? 43 strikeouts in 4 games for that offense. That's a little unnerving for a team that is basically telling you our offense is going to win us games.
Yeah, a lot of strikeouts. Saw a lot of strikeouts. Great news if you're the Dodgers pitching staff. Not so great news if you're the Cardinals. Yeah, I think it's difficult, right? Because we know what Donnie is as a leadoff hitter, and he just didn't, perform up to that level in 4 games. It's hard for me to sit here and draw like definitive analysis and narratives after just 4 games. We can see, obviously, that Arenado is working through something because he doesn't look right at the plate. We know that. I think Jordan Walker's off to a little bit of a slow start. I also think the Dodgers pitchers are really good. We saw the Cardinals get to their relievers on Friday and Saturday, but that starting four, they were nasty. And I really think we'll be able to draw a more definitive overview of this offense once we see them against staffs like the Padres, the Marlins. I know they're pretty beat up, and the Phillies, which are still really good staffs. But this goes back to how we opened the show. It's not Dodgers superstar level. The Dodgers are like another tier out of baseball. That's what $1 billion does. It should be that way. So before we freak out about all the offense, or I should say the lack of offense, I'm willing to give the Cardinals, 3-4 more games to kind of figure it out and see what they do. LA is it's so tough to open there because this is a fan base that rightfully has a lot of expectations and rightfully has a lot of skepticism about this season. And to go up and open against the Dodgers and be completely overmatched, I understand why all the reactions are coming in. I totally do. But I also think we need to take a step back collectively, and I do as well, and say, okay, they're the Dodgers. Let's see how they fare up against other teams. And yes, at the end of the day, if the Cardinals want to be in the playoffs, they're going to have to beat teams like the Dodgers. But before I freak out about the offense or before I start drawing analysis and shaking up that lineup, I would like to see what they do against another series and just kind of compare the two before we can definitively say it's the Cardinals' offense problem or the Dodgers were just really freaking good.
Katie Woo is our guest here on 101 ESPN for just another minute or two. You can find her great work over at The Athletic. She links to it on Twitter at Katie J. Woo. If you go over there, you'll be able to see her post up explaining exactly what went wrong for the Cardinals this weekend in LA. She also has a great piece breaking down the reaction from Victor Scott and his family to his call up to the big leagues. And that's where I wanted to finish with you today, Katie, is about Victor Scott, who I thought looked really good this weekend overall, had a couple, 3 runs in the series. He was the guy that finished with the most runs in that series for the Cardinals. What have you learned about Victor Scott, both as a person and as a player, through your experiences with him in spring training and what we've seen from him through the first 4 games of the season?
So something very cool that I've observed in the last 4 games is that if a ball is hit anywhere in center field and Victor Scott is in the vicinity, I don't feel the need to watch to make sure it gets caught, because it's going to get caught. And that is a huge 180 from last year's defense. So I think already Victor has adjusted defensively to the major leagues, but the Cardinals felt that he was major league ready defensively around, the GM meetings or the winter meetings when we first started talking about Victor. I also thought his at-bats, with the exception of Yamamoto, not Yamamoto, Bobby Miller. Yeah. No one was looking good against Bobby Miller. I thought he was scoring the ball up pretty well. They just weren't falling, and you could see him kind of like pressing and being like, what's it going to take? And then, he beats out that infield hit for a single, first hit, very fitting, and then absolutely barrels a double in his next at bat. I think he's adjusted just fine. And I think he's, if he continues up what he did over the last 4 games into a 2-3 week sample size, I think he'll earn a regular place in St. Louis. But I've really just been impressed by his poise. I mean, think about it. This guy went from Florida to Atlanta to Phoenix to LA, made his major league debut in a span of 5 days. He was telling us in LA he actually left his suitcase in Phoenix. He had to go buy new clothes. The Cardinals clubhouse traveling staff was able to find a suitcase for him and bring it back. He's been all over the place, and he never seemed frazzled. This is coming from someone who's literally frazzled every day of her life. I was so impressed, because he's so young, just a kid, and he comes up, makes his major league debut at Dodger Stadium, has literally flown across the country, and it didn't even faze him. It was like he knew he belonged. So nothing but impressive vibes about Victor Scott, and I think if you're looking for a positive takeaway for the series, he's the clear winner.
I don't know about you, Katie, but that sounds like somebody who needs a little bit more seasoning when the team's healthy. You should go back to Memphis.
Don't start with this.
We'll talk about that when we get there. We'll cross that bridge later on. Katie, appreciate the time as always. People can read all of your great work. Read a little bit about his family as well over at The Athletic right now. We'll talk with you again next week. Enjoy yourself out in San Diego.
You got it, guys. Have a great one. I'll see you Thursday at Busch Stadium.
Absolutely.
Right.
We'll talk to Katie Woo, as we do each and every year, at opening day for the Cardinals, this year at the home opener against the Miami Marlins. Appreciate her doing that each and every season. All right, Alex, we'll finish the show where we started. I've got some complaints. We'll do that next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, if you missed anything from the show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Iron Auto Centers.
Bad job by me. Katie at 1:30 threw us off as if we weren't already off enough. We'll be broadcasting live on Thursday. Katie will be joining us inside of Ballpark Village at Budweiser Brewhouse, just steps away from Busch Stadium for the home opener. The opening day broadcast will be brought to you by Swiss Air Heating and Cooling, Holiday World, and Splash In Safari. Oh, and Budweiser is helping us out with that as well. So we'll see you guys there on Thursday. Final thoughts on this situation with Walker and Wynn and why they didn't play on Saturday? Nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Whatever they're trying to sell you on, don't believe it. It's ridiculous. I like Ollie. I think he's a good manager. I think he messed up. I think he wanted to get his veterans in there. His explanation as to why he wanted to get Gio the opportunity on Friday, I got to get him a touch early. That's ridiculous. His explanation on why you've got to get Brandon Crawford and Matt Carpenter early opportunities, nonsense. I like Ollie. I think he screwed up over the weekend. I think he was the biggest problem for the Cardinals against the Dodgers. Hopefully that changes tonight. Cardinals versus the Padres, Blues versus the Oilers right here on 101 ESPN. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We're out.